Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the 109th Comic Art Live episode. Oh, didn't turn the phone off. Should have known. Something's going to get me every time. I probably haven't muted my laptop either. There, now it is muted as well. So welcome to the show. It seems like we're seeing each other a lot these days, and that's a good thing. I've got a lot of shows going on. I got word tonight of a tentative date for that Sienkiewicz and Dennis Cowan interview and art sale, which I'm not going to talk about tonight. I'm going to save that for the CAF update. But I think we've all been excited about the opportunity of getting the two of those guys together and selling art that they've mutually worked on. And I think we've got a date ironed out, and it is in 2022. So it won't get pushed into next year. So very, very exciting stuff on the horizon here. But I've got going to have a fun interview tonight. I've got Alan Hamilton in the green room, so I'm not going to leave him in there waiting. So let me bring him into the chat. Hey, Alan.
Hey. Good evening.
So, welcome to the show. I mean, it seems like so many people I've seen more than once in the last 6 months, and you're one of them. So I've gotten to actually hang out and meet you in person. So it's been an interesting year with us all getting back to shows after a couple of years of the pandemic and doing all these things on live stream. So have you gotten out to any shows other than the ones that I've seen you at? Is there any local shows to you that you've done?
Well, yeah. So I guess what was the last one I probably saw yet was San Diego.
Yep.
It was Heroes and then San Diego. So yeah, I've actually been I went to Dragon Con because it's local. I live, outside Atlanta. So,
yep.
So that was the most recent one, and I am going to be at New York for the first time. For as long as I've been collecting, I've never been to New York. So this year's the year that I'm actually going to set foot in the Javits Center and see what that's all about. So.
It's a great show. I am going to miss it. I thought about it last week, maybe like switching my plans, but I just can't do it. I can't. Got too many things going on that month. But the New York Comic Con is incredibly fun. I mean, there's just the way they have Artist Alley set up. It literally is the biggest artist alley in the country, and it's a nice show. You get a lot of European collectors that make it to that show, as well as artists from Europe that you wouldn't normally get out to San Diego or even Atlanta. That's a show that they make trips for. So. Yeah, New York is a very, very fun show. You're going to have a good time.
Yeah, no, there's a few artists on there that I saw. I was very surprised to see their names on there. So I definitely have my eye on a few artists. Again, because they're not ones that you typically see at the shows that you're talking about. Mm-hmm. I mean, San Diego and Heroes and Dragon Con, because it's local, are literally those are like the three staple shows I go to every year. So you can count on me being at those three shows, and then I kind of mix and mingle other shows. Each year I'll go to MegaCon one year, or another year I might go to New York in this case.
Sure.
So I'll try and C2E2, so I try to mix and mingle up. But so next year I'm actually kind of like looking forward to maybe trying to work in Lake Como as my sprinkle in show.
Well, if you were taking your spouse, she'd probably enjoy that. I hear that's it's a fun show, and most collectors get to that show because they take their spouse or significant other with them, and you get to make an extra week trip out of it, whether it's at the beginning or the end. They don't even need to go to the Lake Como show. They'll be happy to leave you there while they go sightsee somewhere else. But yeah, no, I'd love to get to Lake Como too. That would be a good one. I was actually emailing with Annabelle earlier today about that from Kirby's Comic Art, and it's a tough show for me because I think as long as I stick to our virtual show schedule, my show is Comic Art Live is going to always be the weekend after Lake Como, and I just don't know if I can do that. I mean, I want to do it, but let's see, maybe the weekday.
And do it, Bill.
Hey, maybe I could do Comic Art Live from Lake Como one year. That might be interesting to stay an extra week, do the show there. Yeah, that's actually might be the way to work it out. I'm sure Morgan could hook me up with some place that has good internet while I was there. So, I actually like that idea.
Plus, that show is it's not like the larger shows, right? I mean, there's a limited number of people who are there. It's a lot more. It's a little bit more intimate. So, I mean, I think that it's not a bad idea to consider doing that.
No. I mean, I want to do it. I've been, they've asked me to go out every year since they started it, and I just, early on I couldn't do it, and then the last couple of years, they didn't do it 2 years ago, and I couldn't do it this year. But I'll work. It's a good idea actually to do it, to do my show live from there the week after, but stay there, not come back. Now, if I can convince Maureen to go with me, that'd be perfect.
Yeah.
Rick Welch has given us a super chat telling me I need a picture hanging fund for my wall. I completely agree. The wall does look bare. I'm going to have to fix that. I did pull out some of my art that I had packed away for the trip down here, and I think there are a few pieces I can hang on the wall. So I will make an effort the next week or two to get some art on the wall. I like what you've got going on behind you, Alan. It looks like you've just got pieces that are sitting on shelves. Is that true?
Yeah. So we just bought this house. Actually, it was like right around the pandemic. So we've only been in this house for a couple of years. And so as part of this house, there's this bonus room area that we had finished because I work from home. So it was a good space to build an office into. And so as part of the deal with me working from home and doing all the stuff that I do, running the kids around, is that I got a gallery wall. So because I had all this art, and for the longest time, my wife was like not necessarily a huge fan of like having a bunch of the stuff hanging on the wall at our old house, anyways. And so when we moved, one of her friends who's an interior designer who kind of helps her like do a lot of these built-ins in the house was like, you've got to let them put this stuff up. There's these things look great on the wall. So, and so her friend actually convinced her that that I should have a gallery wall. And so they put these shelves up here, and I can I can change what I put up there, depending on what I feel like putting up there. And so this is kind of like the first kind of go at putting some stuff up on the wall. So,
Well, I think there's some collectors in the audience who might want to talk to your wife's friend. Maybe even would be willing to pay her a few dollars to have her convince their spouses that they can hang more art on the walls in the house too. That's wonderful. I've never had anybody come in and lobby for more art on the walls in my house.
Yeah.
But I like the way that's done. That actually might be a solution to my problem, because back in Ohio, the only pieces I put on the wall were stuff I had that was framed, and I've always contemplated how I could change those out better. I have frames that like those clip frames where the glass clips to a masonite back. I've thought about using those. I have a bunch of those, but those are still in a fixed position on the wall. But doing something like what you've done there might be the way I would take it, just because then I could change the art out all the time. And I actually kind of like that idea, at least for part of the wall. So I'm going to think about that.
Yeah, no, it's definitely convenient. Because you can also alter, obviously the sizing. You can see the different sizes of frames that are, out there, and you can kind of change the way that looks. And there are some other on other parts of the wall in this room. There are some other shelving on there. I just haven't gotten around to putting art up on those yet, since this has kind of been recently completed. And so this like kind of built in over here that you can kind of see. So there's cabinet space under here, and so all my binders and books and stuff are actually like organized in shelving under these cabinets as well. So part of her friends like interior design and the way they put this together, they were like, hey, you should really give them some space to store all this stuff. So her friend has been a really good advocate for like helping to build in like practical usable things to like help like store things for my hobby. Even within the closet that's in this room, there are built-in like pull-out shelves for comic books or CGC graded books. They're sized for the books and everything. So they like customized it for the different things in my collection. So it was actually pretty nice and thoughtful. So. Right.
Well, I think, again, collectors in the Atlanta area might want to hire them as a team to come in and kind of modify their spaces too. That's awesome. Never thought about doing that. And Benno's a resident of Atlanta as well. He said, wait a minute, you live in Atlanta? We got to get together sometime. Benno has a regular get together every year too.
Yeah, no, for sure. And the interesting thing is, I think I actually have met Benno at one time or another. I don't know if we spent a whole lot of time talking, but I know, when I go to the Dragon Con, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, Benno, but I'm pretty sure that he sets up with like Randy Martin and a few other guys, and they kind of put up some art on display at Dragon Con. And usually the themes like change from year to year. And so, I know Randy a little bit better than probably most of the rest of the other guys that kind of do that. Mainly because like when I started collecting earlier on, I kind of got to know him a little bit through CAF, and then obviously Laura, I've like used her in the past to do color work on some art. And so, usually when I see them, I'll say hi, or, and we're at least familiar with each other. So, but yeah, I'm pretty sure I've like seen Benno, or at least in passing have met him. But one of those things is, it probably doesn't come across this way. And I know that for as long as that we've kind of talked, it maybe doesn't come this way, but generally speaking, I'm not like a super extroverted kind of person. I'm kind of like, it takes me a little while to build those kind of relationships with people. But once I have the relationships, then it's like completely different. It's what they call those, extroverted introverts,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing. So
you got to work your way into it.
That's kind of how it is. Yeah.
Well, I remember you were hugging the bar a lot at Heroes, as I recall. You were sitting at the bar for a while. Trust me, I am more of an introvert than an extrovert. I know it doesn't seem like that doing these streams, but trust me, I didn't talk to anybody growing up. It was like the guy who just sat there drawing in the corner, and so yeah, this is all new to me. I just kind of throw myself into these and make it work, but. What was that? Bootlegging said Benno helps out with an art display at the show to educate people on original art.
Yeah,
it's a good idea, right? I mean, he's trying to advocate for the arts there and get people to get in there and buy art while they're there. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So Benno goes to Heroes a lot too. So you either if you hadn't seen him at Dragon Con, you probably would have seen him at Heroes once or twice as well. He's hard to miss. He's everywhere. But Alan, so we usually start these things out with the origin story for you in the hobby and in the comics. What really kind of got you going? Because it sounds like you've been collecting a while. I mean, if you were buying, or dealing with Randy, and Laura early on. I mean, Randy, I know he was a dealer for a while, repping some people and stuff. So when did you get started in art collecting? But when did your interest in comics begin as well?
So I think I started around like 2013. I think that's probably when the first piece I have is actually in CAF. And actually part of the reason why I ended up starting collecting art was because I kind of stumbled across it through CAF. Yeah, and it was like one of those, when you think about like time frames of like where I was in my life, it was kind of like right when I had our second kid. And so, up until that point, most of the stuff that I was doing at like all the hobbies that I had were pretty much like out the window. Like after I got done with college and got married, I was in comic books for a long time. And I used to like the stuff I really, really loved back then was all the stuff that came out, all the independent titles when all the artists like kind of went out and did their own thing with like Image and Top Cow. And they had all those, titles like Danger Girl and COVID and like everyone's doing kind of their own creative thing. And so that's kind of like when I was like, oh yeah, all the stuff I bought back then was primarily around that. I just like the way that the artists were, presenting not just their stories, but the art itself that was in those stories. And so, that I bought books or comic books basically by visual things, not necessarily by the story. And it just happened to be that some of the stories I liked anyways, but a lot of it I just bought because I just liked the art. And so at the same time, I was also a Magic collector and a Magic player. And I actually wasn't too bad at Magic back then. Back then I lived in Kansas. So in Kansas, I was actually, fairly decently ranked within the state of Kansas, from a Magic standpoint in terms of rating for like sealed competition. Because I've always been kind of good at like taking things and puzzling things together and figuring out how to make things work with, make what you got work for what you're trying to do. And so I was always kind of good at those kind of like sealed kind of competitions. So I had like this incredible like Magic collection. Like it was absurd. I still joke with some people now, even today, that I'm like, that I have to be put on suicide watch because of the collection that I sold. Because like back then, I sold the collection for, it seemed like a lot of money because it was like $15,000 or something like that, right? I was like, oh man, that's a lot of money. And I sold it because it was one of those things where I was getting married, and so it was a way to like, pay for all the stuff that was associated with the wedding. And so at the time I was like, I'm not really playing all that much. And, for what I had into it, I was actually probably making quite a bit of money. But looking back at it now, looking at what stuff sells for on Heritage, I'm like, it's like, ee. So, several years
What year was that?
Oh, that would be like, in the like 1995 to 2000 range.
Okay.
So, I had like, beta cards and alpha cards, and, all the dual lands and, all the stuff that you see nowadays that, if it's like graded or even remotely good, that it sells for a nice penny. And I'm just like, just think of how much art I could have bought with all that if I had kept those cards.
That's right.
So, I got out of that, and then I didn't really I didn't really keep buying comic books because, I had so much time I had to, with young kids, and then being so early in marriage, and, we were buying our first house and all that stuff. It was one of those things where I didn't have a whole lot of time to do much outside of that. And then, like career things too, that's like the first 5 or 6 years of, being out of college and, being in a job. And so you're trying to like advance your career. And so you're spending extra time at work and doing all the things that kind of take away from everything. So I had the opportunity to move to the Southeast. So that's how I ended up in Atlanta, through the job that I had. So they paid for relocation and moved us all out here, and paid for the move and all that. And so when I got out here and things were a little bit more settled, I was like, hey, I really want to, take up a hobby again, find something that I really enjoy, really love. And so I started like looking at, well, maybe I can get back into comic books and buying comics. And then as I was kind of looking at it, and kind of seeing what was out there and where the artists that I liked from back in the day when I did read comic books, like what they were working on and what things they were doing now, it just kind of like took me down the rabbit hole to where I came across like artwork and original art pages, and found that they were available. And I was like, well, why would I collect comic books when I can buy art? And I know that that's one of a kind. That's all there is. And it was kind of the same thing. At least the idea at the time was like, oh, well, I got to start small, right? Because I don't have, I'm just out of school still, and I don't make a whole lot of money. But it took me some time to build a nice magic collection back then. They surely I can build a decent art collection over time as well, if I just keep kind of like piecing things together and then kind of work my way up to a better collection. I mean, it's all like a little bit subjective, right? So that's kind of like how I ended up there. It's just like, given the choices of hobbies that I could have done, I was like, well, I'm going to do something that's like truly like everything that you're after is unique. It's one of a kind. It's and it's a matter of what your taste is. And because I like the art anyways, back in the day in the books, it was kind of like a nice fit and a nice way to kind of step into something that was new. It was exciting, and that's kind of ended up here. So
right. But so first art purchase, where'd you do that?
Interestingly enough, my first art purchase was off Comic Connect.
And I don't think I've heard that before. So
yeah,
tell me how that happened.
Yeah, so it's at probably the very first page that's on CAF. It's a Coven page, because Coven was one of those books that I liked back in the day, and I really liked Ian Churchill, his artwork a lot.
Oh yeah, me too.
And so it was just a nice page from that book. At the time it was a lot of money to me, because again, I'm still like not making a whole lot of money, just getting out of college and just married and have 2 kids. So the money and the budget was a little bit tight, but I think I only spent I want to say it was only about $150 or something like that on that page. And so now it's like, oh yeah, $150. I'd buy a page just like that all day long. But yeah,
it's a nice page. I'm looking at it right now. I was always a big Coven fan as well. So yeah, that's a very nice page. I have one page as well, and I know where a cover is available too.
Yeah.
Yeah. But very nice. But yeah, that's a really great piece to start with too. I mean, Churchill. It was my first. I think my first published piece that I bought was a piece by Ian as well. It was from it was from an X-Men title when he was doing those in the late '90s. It was a Nightcrawler page. But yeah, that's funny. So both of our first pieces were by Ian. That's good. But now, the one thing I would note though is, okay, so that's a published piece, but by and large, you're more of a pinup commission, concept collector, I guess. So, so you found published work first, but then, how did that transition really happen?
So I guess you could say like that published piece was kind of like dipping my toe in the water, so to speak. And so I also kind of realized then that I wasn't like super knowledgeable or familiar with like all the kind of published artwork or that space, so to speak. But I liked the idea of being able to go and get art of things that I enjoyed or that were interesting to me. And so, and having the kind of interaction with artists that you get when you do commission work. And so, when I started going to that, one of the things I wanted to do was like identify, if I was going to get a commission, what would I actually want to get? So, and that's kind of how I ended up with a list of like characters that I generally focus my collection on. And it's actually narrowed over time. I think at first I maybe had like 5 or 6 different characters that I kind of have, and you can kind of see remnants of it when you kind of look through my collection, but it ended up kind of like narrowing to 3 primary characters, which at the time, so the 3 characters I mainly focus on nowadays are Daenerys from Game of Thrones, and Ramona Flowers from Scott Pilgrim, because it was just a book that I loved, and then the movie was just something that I like. For me, it's like top 10 movie of all time.
Yeah, I love
it all over. I mean, I can literally watch it anytime. I would never get bored with that movie. And then Savage Land Rogue, and the main reason why I ended up going with Savage Land Rogue is because kind of in that time frame when Jim Lee was doing those books, the cover that he did that has Savage Land Rogue on it, and then that whole run, I was just like, Rogue was already a character that I liked, but just the whole like look and aesthetic of her being in the jungle and that ripped up suit look, I was like, that's just something I can go with. And part of the reason I wanted to have a character like that is because I knew like Daenerys and Ramona were kind of like outside the box characters for a lot of people, and I wanted to have something that was a little bit more mainstream. So that way, like if they didn't feel comfortable doing something that was outside the box, that they could just opt to do, I'm familiar with Rogue and X-Men, I can do that character and be comfortable with it. So that's kind of the idea that I had with that. The Daenerys and Ramona piece of it, at the time, I was like, well, look, I like the characters, but the other reason why I thought they were good choices for characters to commission is because if you look at their characters, whether it's like the show Game of Thrones, or you look at Ramona within the graphic novel as well as the movie, there are a lot of different looks that they have in those movies. There are different aesthetics that they're in, different outfits, different backgrounds or sceneries that they're in. So there's all kinds of different ways that you could execute those characters. And whether you wanted to do, Daenerys on a dragon, Daenerys on a throne, Ramona with purple hair, Ramona with a hammer, there was just like so many things you could do with those characters. It wasn't just like, you pick this character and there's like one like staple look that everyone just goes with. It's like, hey, do this character and do it how you want to. And so it was just a nice thing that kind of gave some optionality to artists to be outside the box if they wanted to, or give me something that I would be equally as happy with, but they were more comfortable maybe staying within the mainstream.
Well,
so
that's cool though. I mean, you're like you say, you were really giving them a alternative to what they're used to doing, and a choice too. And I like that idea. And Daenerys as a character, I mean, you love Game of Thrones, but I mean, you kind of came from Magic the Gathering background as well, so you probably have a fantasy sci-fi gene that makes you really like that kind of art as well, I imagine. So that as a character, that fits probably really well into your wheelhouse and everything too. I think that's awesome. The Ramona character though, that's got to be a character that most people are not going to get that request too often unless you're O'Malley, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
so that's neat, and I know that we're going to show one of the pieces. It's on the, I think it's behind you as well, that we're going to look at later today.
Yeah.
One as well. So I mean, yeah, one of the more colorful pieces tonight. But
Yeah.
so the like you said though, you got the one published piece, but so you've kind of kept away from that. So the published pages aren't as interesting to you. I mean, I guess
So no,
or not
actually,
really?
that's not true. So
Okay.
so I would say, like, I started out like, with that page initially, and then I went like almost hard right on the commission side, right? Like then it was just like commissions. But I would say actually in the like the last couple years, I've gone the other way. I've gone less commissions and gone more to the published side of the work. Because again, I think some of it has to do with I'm in a different place, financially, where I can, afford a little bit more. I mean, I can't like ball out like some people can, but I can do a lot better than what I could have done when I first started getting into the hobby, for sure. And I have more time now. I feel like I'm a little bit more seasoned about like what is out there and what kind of art on the published side is out there, that I like aesthetically. And to be quite honest, in the last couple of years, it's actually made more sense to me to put my money to published art, for a couple of reasons. One is that commission prices are in general, going up, to the point where it's almost comparable to buying a published page
or more.
Yeah.
Cases, right? So yeah, I agree.
And then the other part of it is, it's like when you get a published piece, exactly what you're getting. I mean, obviously you hope that anything that you commission is going to come out great. But there's something nice about knowing that I'm putting money into something and I know exactly what it is that I'm getting, and it makes me happy to take that piece home. And that's part of the reason. So, and I think that, with the pieces that we'll look at tonight, some of it is, focused on the pinup side to kind of say, here's kind of like the things that I enjoy with these pinups. But when we start looking at the published pieces, I think it will, kind of show like aesthetically, kind of like how my collection, how like I view art, or, how I like look at published pieces in terms of
right,
like
and how your tastes have evolved, and how I mean, and that makes a lot of sense. I mean, going into it early, I think I primarily did get commissions early on, and I don't know why. It was just because it seemed easier, and even though at the end of the day, I look at it now and it's like I don't want to get as many commissions as I did early on. But that was my kind of intro as well. Was it maybe because they were a little more affordable. The published pages kind of scared me. I didn't really know unless I really wanted it. If it was, and for me, it was always if it was something I read and I really loved it. I wasn't buying it necessarily for the art's sake. I was buying it because I really loved the story that it was from. But the commissions I was getting was always getting something from somebody who I really appreciated, whether it was, a George Perez or, early on I got a couple friends sketches as well. So, just fun interactions with people I thought would be, cool to kind of chat with while they were doing a sketch or something at a con. And I wanted to highlight one piece. Mikhail said that they dropped a comment on your McCone piece, and that's not one of the pieces we are showing tonight. So I figured I'd go ahead and show that right here. So very nice.
That's something I just got at this last San Diego. I set that up with McCone through Tatiana, actually. So he got the same choice that I give every artist. He had the choice of Ramona, Daenerys, or Savage Land Rogue, and he chose to do Ramona. So, and that's the one thing I do. I mean, while I might have dialed back on commissions, I still like to do them because I like to see how artists interpret, how they execute the commission on some of these characters, right? Because especially these ones that are outside the box, because it's like, they probably draw Black Cat all day or Rogue all day or Scarlet Witch, but when they're like, hey, I've got to draw Ramona Flowers, I got to draw Daenerys Targaryen. It's interesting to see how they interpret it, because I mean, literally the only thing I tell them is like, you draw the character how you see it. If you want to do likenesses, then do likenesses. If you don't want to do likenesses, that's okay too. Just interpret it how you want. What I want to see is I want to see that character in your style and how you view that character, and then you get a lot of interesting things that come from that.
Well, you got a great piece. You had done this at the show, or did you line it up prior to the show?
I lined it up prior to the show.
Yeah.
Yep. So there was a few pieces that I lined up prior to pick up. That was one of them. I think the only one that I was like really going out of my way for at San Diego, I really went into San Diego trying to just go and look at stuff and then buy stuff that I wanted to get. But there was a handful of pieces that I picked up. I think I got like a Ramona flowers from Felipe Andrade through Felix. I got a Ramona from Stephen Green, also through Felix. Okay. But the one that I was really trying to get was I really wanted to get a death sketch from Mark Hempel. And so that he was really kind of the person I wanted to get something from. And I ended up getting something from him, but it was one of those things where at first he was like, I don't know if I really want to do any sketching. And then he was like, well, what do you want? And I said, well, I want a death. And he's like, oh, well, I can do that. And the death that he did was, in my opinion, I loved it. I mean, I thought it was very much what I expected to get from him when I asked for death. And so I was very happy with it. And again, it's like one of those things where, when you're buying art, it's from a monetary standpoint, it's a zero-sum game, right? Like you have a finite amount of resources and you have to figure out how you can maximize those resources. And so in this case, it was, to get that piece, it was like a very, very reasonable price. And I came away from San Diego without coming anywhere close to like blowing my budget. And I got a lot of pieces that I was very happy with. So.
Well, that's good. I mean, a lot of times you go to a show and you've got a checklist of things you want to get, and not always does your plan come to fruition. And I think it seems like 50-50 for me when I'm actually trying to get commissions from people that I haven't lined up pre-show, where you get lucky. So catching Hempel at the right time, certainly. I mean, that's a nice piece, something done at a show, which is you never know what you're going to get, but with Hempel. This is really nice.
Yeah, no, I was very happy with that. So I mean, just a show, and I can tell you, like the price on it was definitely very fair. And so in my mind, when you can get that kind of thing, like that right alignment of price and quality, for the artists and stuff, it's it's always feels good to do that.
How many days were you at the show?
I was there the whole time. Yeah.
Preview night too?
Preview night as well. Yeah. So like the last several San Diegos that I've gone to, I've actually, I've gone and I generally help Quan Chang with his booth. So getting it set up, taking it down and breaking it down. I don't have to like sit there and work his booth. So that's like the nice thing, but it's, but I go in there and I help him set up and take stuff down, and I get to, hang out and see a lot of art, anything that he gets in that comes in new, I get to look at first. So, certainly a lot of his artists are like in a different price range than, some of the range of art that I'm buying. I'm an appreciator of art, so it's nice to be able to look through all that stuff and also talk with people who come by his booth that are, looking to purchase some of that stuff as well.
Sure. I'm highlighting this one just because I saw Mikhail mention this Savage Land Rogue is amazing, and it is. I remember seeing this piece when it got added to CAF. It's stunning. It really is gorgeous.
Yeah. No, I wasn't sure what Philippe was going to do, because he got the same set of choices. But when that showed up, when I saw Felix do one of his unboxing shows and was showing, I was like, yeah.
You were happy.
Yeah, and then like it's a lot. I mean, you see it like on the screen, but like if you see it in person, a lot of these art pieces, I think a lot of people who are collectors would say, I mean, there's some pieces that there's no scan that would ever do it justice, comparative to being able to actually see it in person. And that's actually one of those pieces.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at it, on my screen, which is going to be larger than what most people are looking at, and I can tell there's so much more detail than what I'm able to see on that. So yeah, it must look stunning in person.
Yeah, no, that's one of those ones I was also very happy with. And again, it's like I want to say that was a very, very reasonably priced piece as well. I do this thing in my head. I know I probably shouldn't, but when I'm like looking at pieces or buying pieces or looking at commissions, I will do the math in my head like, oh, okay, well, so you want this much for a commission or you want this much for this piece. What else can I get for that?
There's nothing wrong with thinking like that, though, at the end of the day, because it might you may end up deciding it's not worth it, right? But no, you have to. I mean, you're spending money, right? So it's not that because you don't want the artwork from somebody. It's sometimes that money might be better spent elsewhere, and that's okay.
Yeah, for sure.
But I would agree with you on Felix. A lot of the commission pieces that he's done. I mean, they do a pretty good job of getting artwork into as many collectors' hands as possible at a fair price. I mean, I'm always impressed with the amount of work that they do churn out, whether it's at cons or the commission pieces and opportunities that they put out there. They've always been really, really fair.
Yeah, and I mean, I can honestly say that I do have. I mean, I have like a running list of stuff that I've seen that I'm like, oh yeah, I'm interested in this, and eventually those things might move to the top of the list. But it's one of those things where it's like you said, you're prioritizing and you're comparative shopping, and so you're putting your money towards the things that are like higher priority or higher on your list. And it's not that I don't like these other pieces. It's just that those pieces haven't quite, gotten up to the point where it's like, oh, I like it better than this one, or, better than this other piece.
Right.
No, I saw somebody who had a question that was like, whether I'm patient.
Yeah, I've got that one started. Yeah, I was waiting to pull that up.
Yeah. So I would say no. So for me personally, I'm generally like super patient when it comes to commissions. Maybe borderline too patient. But I haven't had very many. Actually, I haven't had any that I've ultimately not ended up with. Like anybody who I didn't actually get a commission from were ones that we had a discussion up front. It was like, hey, if I got the time to do it, I will be happy to do it, but I'm not going to take your money up front. So as long as they're not taking my money up front and I'm not waiting on, on something, I don't really have a problem with it. And some of the artists are such that I'm like, well, if I get something from them, if I have to wait a year, then so be it. And some pieces I have had to wait a while on. But it hasn't really, like I said, it's not something that's bothered me. If I wanted it in my collection, I don't have a problem waiting for it. As long as that's like the expectation that's set up front, it's not a problem for me. And it's usually one of those things where it's like, hey, I'll check in and they'll say, yeah, I haven't gotten to it yet, or I'll started working on it. And as long as there's like communication there, I don't really have a problem with it. And so I've just been lucky, I guess, that I haven't had some of these horror stories that some other people have had with some artists. And I say that knowing that there are artists in my collection, because I have a lot of artists that I've got art from that I know have a reputation for not being the best about delivering product.
Right.
And so that's why I say that I've maybe been a little bit fortunate in that case, because I haven't had those experiences, even though I've had art, from those artists that have that reputation.
That have had issues in the past. Right. And a lot of artists do get better at it. I mean, whether it's because they got repped or they've changed their ways. It's what are you going to do? I mean, there's bad stories. There's Facebook groups to talk just about this very important topic in the hobby, and you hear about it all the time. Guys who are, artists who are back, they're doing regular commission work and getting it done on time, but they owe people commissions from 6 or 7 years ago, kind of things. There's plenty of Kickstarter horror stories of people who've paid for commissions and not gotten them. So yeah, it does happen. And it's my advice to everybody who thinks about doing commissions is probably join groups like that. You'll get at least a feel for what the prices are commission wise, because a lot of those groups also talk about the prices that people charge for commissions or convention sketches, but also it gives you a vibe for people who maybe had bad experiences with other artists. And typically if somebody says they had a bad experience and there's other people that have, they all kind of will mention that they are all in the same kind of boat.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it is what it is. It's a part of our hobby, and you have to kind of take it as you will. But as far as getting commissions though, do you find that you like to pursue different artists to get commissions from, or is there certain artists that you've gone back to multiple times because you just really like their work and you think they can do better than whatever they did the last time? I mean, what's your approach to that?
So no, generally I like to try to get different artists. Again, it's because my commissions are character based, right? I don't think I've gotten two Daenerys, for example, from the same artist. Okay. But I have gotten a commission of like maybe Daenerys and then a Ramona and then even a Savage Land Rogue from the same artist.
So you do. That was one of my questions for you. If you have the trifecta from a single artist for all three characters.
So I have to actually think about that one. I'm not sure if I've got the trifecta because I know like at most there are several of them that I have at least 2 of them from.
Okay.
And I'm working on the trifecta from a few of them. So like for example, I know like with Chris Bachalo, I do have a Daenerys, and I do have like 3 Savage Land Rogues from him actually.
Well, he draws a good Savage Land Rogue.
I know he does. Well, and the thing is, I gave him the choice too of Ramona, and so I had several conversations with him about it. I mean, he's actually interested in doing Ramona. He's just kind of got to be in the right headspace to do it. And he's also a big fan of Scott Pilgrim, so he's it's one of those things where I said like, hey, whenever you decide that you're going to do it, I just want to have the first shot at it. And so, and part of that has to do with because, again, it's one of those things where I actually spent some time with him at one of the shows in Chicago. I think it's like an Ace show. And he was at the show with his son. So Quan had him and Olivier Coipel there. And so I was kind of hanging out with them at the show, and Chris brought his son down there because his son is a huge fan of Brie Larson. And so Brie Larson just happened to be at the show. And so I spent some time talking with his son, and he was also a big, huge fan of Scott Pilgrim. And so we were just all kind of talking about Scott Pilgrim. And so that's how we kind of got segued into like, hey, would you want to do a Ramona Flowers at some point? So yeah, I'm hoping at some point that I will get the trifecta from Chris, for my collection for sure.
No, well, he'd be a good one to get all 3 from. I've always loved his work, and so yeah, you're good friends with Quan. I've been good friends with Quan for a very long time too. He's fun. He's interesting to hang out with. He's got a unique approach to the hobby.
Yeah. He's definitely a riot for sure.
Oh, no, he is. He keeps me in stitches, but he's very consistent in his approach to things, and I love him for it. I built his website a long time ago, and we've known each other for a very long time. And he's in Florida too. I should but he's further down. He's like 4 hours away from me, in Miami. That's a bit of a haul, but I'm sure I'll run into him here at some point.
Yeah, no, I'll see him at New York, so he's going to be out there as well.
Well, that is a usual one for him, but cool. I mean, so, but that would be how you've been able to get so many pieces from Chris too, is just being in proximity of him to.
Yeah, well, so interestingly enough, though, only the Daenerys was really one of those ones where it was kind of the connection with Quan. Like it was the first time one of the first times I was in San Diego where Chris was actually there as well. And so Quan was like, hey, Chris is going to be taking a list. And so I was like, well, can I get on this list? And he's like, yeah, what do you want? I was like, well, I want a Daenerys.
And he probably, and I can imagine the look on Quan's face when you said that. He probably was like,
yeah, he's like, what?
Nobody asked for that.
Yeah. But then like you saw, I mean, it turned out amazing. I mean, it's very much in Chris's style, and just the way that he like puts, I mean, and you can see it in some of his other artwork, right? Like when he draws like creatures or like in this case dragons, he's just kind of a unique way of kind of constructing those types of things in his background. And so, but like as far as the Savage Land Rogues go, though, it was one of those things where I know I had to play the lottery like everybody else. So I threw my name in the bucket, and it just happened to get drawn. And so in that case, two of those Savage Land Rogues came from that, because he ended up drawing 3 of them, and he was like, you get one of these, as part of the lottery. He goes, but then you have the option to buy the other 2 as well. So I ended up buying one of the other 2 because that was really all I felt comfortable with, putting into that pot. And so that's how I ended up with 2 of the 3 anyways, is by lottery.
Well, that's good. I've got one Charlie Adlard Walking Dead piece that way, because I helped Marquet out a lot back in the day, and I'd see Charlie at a lot of the shows, and I'd never be able to get anything. And I would try that. They would do lotteries at some of the shows, and Mark would never give me you never give me dibs on anything. So I had to get lucky every time too. And I finally got lucky one time at New York Comic Con where they were doing tickets or something like that, and I managed to get one. But all the other ones I had to work for. So yeah, while it seems like everybody who helps a rep or a dealer gets fringe benefits, it's not always true. A lot of the dealers tend to want to make sure they keep their customers happy first, that are paying to go to the show and everything. The biggest perk we get is an exhibitor badge or something to help us get into the show a little earlier or something, but which is worth it.
Yeah, no, and it is. I mean, so outside of art, for San Diego, that's definitely worth it. I mean, especially more so in years past, right? Like when they were when they had exclusives or signings or whatnot, the only way that you even had a chance at any of those things is if you were on the floor before most of the line opens up. And so, at least prior to COVID, when it was, when they were really hot and heavy on exclusives and signings, all the different booths, had cast signings or whatnot. I had one of my friends from high school who goes to San Diego every year. She's ADA, and so it was nice for me to be able to be on the floor, and I could help her get some of these exclusives or get into some of these signings that she wouldn't have been able to get into just because of her condition. So
sure.
So yeah, it's been that's to me more of a nice benefit. I haven't necessarily reaped a whole lot of benefit necessarily from the art side, other than just having the opportunity to meet a lot of these artists and talk to them and see a lot of this art before it even before Quan even puts it out on his site. So I think there's different ways that you can, benefit by having, the friendships and the relationships within this community outside of just the art itself.
Oh no, without question. I mean, I feel like, and that's always the best part of it too. I mean, the more those acquaintances you get to make, the more those tend to lead to more opportunities. I mean, and you tend to hear about more buying opportunities or opportunities to even just meet somebody else in the hobby or a creator that you wanted to meet. So it's you're definitely doing the right thing. And Marcus gives his 2 cents on helping a dealer or a rep. He says, "Moy, no discount." Yeah, that is true.
That's pretty much true. Yes.
Yep. No, I always tell everybody, the last time I bought something from Albert, I paid full price for something, and I asked if he'd give me free shipping, and he said, he said no, never. Like $20. You can't kick your favorite web developer, free shipping. No. If you want it, it's this price with this shipping. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. It seems like we should have a few more perks than we do, but no. But Quan's fun. I mean, I've definitely always enjoyed hanging out with him. And he is one of my favorite people in the hobby. Believe it or not, as grumpy as he feels, he's always been fun, and he's a family man now. I mean, he's got kids. He's enjoying that side of his life.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, like I said, I mean, he is definitely one of the people I enjoy most in the hobby that I've gotten to meet, for sure.
Cool. Well, why don't you want to look at some art? I mean, we've got you picked 18 pieces, like I always ask everybody to do, and I can see some of those artworks, like I said, on the back wall behind you too. But we'll pick a few of these, and we can talk about the significance of each of them. So I think I put them in the order that you sent them to me as well. So let's go ahead and pull up the first one by Joelle Jones.
Yeah, so this one is an interesting one. So before I even talk about the art, I mean, one of the things I try to do on some of the pieces that I picked is I try to not just pick pieces that I think are aesthetically some of the better pieces that I own, but also I try to pick some pieces from some artists that are maybe a little bit, maybe a little bit less known or a little bit off of kind of your bigger names. Just because I feel like their art is really good, and I think that as other collectors who might be watching, that it's a way to kind of say, hey, if you don't have something from this person, here's an opportunity to go and this might be a person that you want to check out. So that's kind of how I kind of approach some of the pieces that I picked. In this case, this Joelle Jones. So interestingly enough, this one was one when COVID was kind of going on, and we all had a lot of spare time on our hands. I was, I spent a lot of time like looking for, pieces that I wanted to like add to my collection from artists. And so, I mean, I have a couple of Joelle Jones pieces as well. I have a Daenerys as well, but I wanted to get something because I hadn't had something from her to add it to my collection in quite some time, and she had just started doing all that work in with around like the Batman and Catwoman with the whole dress design for the wedding dress. And so she was kind of like heating up. And so it was getting a little bit harder to find nice pieces from her. And so I was out, just kind of like looking at art pieces on CAF, interestingly enough. And I came across this piece and I just loved it because, it's just such a unique like perspective in terms of or framing of the character. It's not something that you typically see. And Joelle Jones doesn't like do a lot of pieces like this nowadays. And if she does, it definitely is not cheap. And so this is one of those ones where it was another collector on CAF, and I just happened to reach out to them and start a conversation about this piece. And they were like, hey, I am actually, willing to move this piece if you're interested in it. And so I ended up acquiring this from another collector on CAF. And got to know this person just because I started a conversation about this piece during all that COVID happening. And the interesting thing about this person who sold this to me is they actually have a lot more art than what they actually have on their CAF. They sent me a video of them flipping through their binder, and there was like a lot of stuff in there. I was just like, oh, well, now I know where some of that why the last man pages are at. So it's just funny that you like when you start to get to know some of these other collectors, and then you realize, there's a lot of collectors out there that what they have on their CAF is just like at the tip of the iceberg of what they actually have in their collection. And so this is one of those things where it was like during COVID, and I had a lot of time on my hand, and I was like, hey, I really want a Joelle Jones piece. And so that kind of like focus on trying to get a nice Joelle Jones piece kind of like drove me to this one. And it just happened to be the right like combination of, hey, I love the way that this looks because it's color and how it's framed, and it's a Wonder Woman piece. It's a very sizable piece as well. I mean, I actually have it up here on the wall behind me, and you can see. I mean, it's around 11 by 17, and you just don't see a lot of those pieces from Joelle Jones nowadays. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. And yeah, like NSN mentioned, that was you got a private flip. I mean, that's pretty special. I can't say I've heard of anybody exchanging, like flip videos just to kind of share what they have. But that's cool. I mean, obviously, you guys built up a level of trust, just through meeting to purchase this piece. And no, I mean, I think that's awesome. And like you say, though, a lot of people don't share all of their collections on CAF. They just, whether it's a timing thing or there's certain pieces that people would rather not show on CAF because they, don't want to be pestered or whatever. I mean, there's lots of reasons for that, but I'm more interested in the reasons why they, the pieces they want to show on CAF. It's not always because they're for sale or they're looking for leads, but a lot of people, I'm always wondering about that, because I know a lot of collectors who only share a quarter of their collection on CAF. And the pieces that they're not selling, those are the pieces they choose to share versus the ones they kind of choose to keep in, hidden from prying eyes, I guess. But that's cool.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason why too that I ended up with that as well is, a lot of stuff. If I'm like asking for a piece, from or inquiring about it with another collector, I mean, I think at least most of the people who know me or have gotten to know me, they realize that it's something that I'm going to hold on to. If I'm asking about it and I want to buy it, it's something that I want, and it's going to go to a place that's like a good home, and it's going to be taken care of. And really, I mean, on that one too, the original owner was willing to sell it for what they paid for it. And I was like, no, that's not going to happen. I was like, I appreciate that, but I'm going to pay you, I'm going to pay you at least a little bit more than that, because I know that that's not what it's worth. I mean, I appreciate this like the offer, but I wasn't going to allow that person to sell it to me at what they at, because I just knew that wasn't where it was at. So
when you've made purchases through CAF or other, social places. I mean, CAF is, I guess, a social platform and it's in and of itself. I mean, have you ever had anybody ask you for references? Have you ever dealt with anybody and then want to know? And
Yeah, no, strangely enough, no. I mean, I don't know if that's, I mean, in the past, I would say, I like back in the day when I was in Magic and I was trying to trade cards, that would always come up with your references, who have you traded with, and stuff. But interestingly enough, no one has asked that. And maybe that's because, because I'm usually on the buying end. So, I mean, they have, it's really me, I guess, who's really taking more of the risk, right? Because I'm assuming, hey, that they're not just going to run off with my money. But I try to be at least somewhat, or make it my best educated guess about like their trustworthiness based off like their activity and like the type of art that they're posting out there. I mean, it's kind of like taking a bunch of different pieces and like saying, okay, this person seems like, they're active. The type of things that they're collecting are, things that, because again, this community, the way that it is, I mean, I don't think you want to get a reputation as being somebody who's, running off with people's money or not following through on transactions. So I feel like as a community, we're pretty good about policing that kind of stuff. So as long as you're at least put some due diligence in up front, then I feel like I can, kind of figure out where I'm comfortable spending my money and not.
Right. Well, and having a CAF gallery is kind of like a partial credibility rating for you. Just there. We've been hearing a lot about people who don't post art to their CAF and then they try to buy something. Seeing no art in a person's gallery makes people be apprehensive about that person. Even if they've had a CAF account for 10, 15 years, because there are lots of people that have had CAF accounts for years and have never posted any single piece of art. They just use it for communications and buying art and that sort of thing. But I hear that more and more. People without art there's a big question mark on them. And so, but you're the exact opposite. You have so much art there. So when you go to make an inquiry, for the people who maybe they think about asking for a reference, but after they see that you've got 250 pieces in your CAF gallery, they're like, well, he's legit. He's a buyer. He's not hiding anything. So I don't know. I was just curious. That's a question I haven't really asked anybody before, but it's been something on my mind of late is are those sorts of things coming up in the hobby? I mean, maybe with more expensive pieces and sales on CAF transactions that might happen, people might be more interested in, have you ever bought, give me the names of some dealers you bought from, kind of a thing. And, asking some questions, but okay, well then, or you just have a trustworthy, personality. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Well, I mean, if somebody wanted to, ask, I mean, I want to feel like maybe at some point there was something where, or maybe it was like on the CGC boards or something like that, when I was selling like books or something like that. And so I will usually put it out there, up front, like, hey, if you want to check, I mean, here's my eBay ID. You can look at it. And I've got like my eBay ID has got something like 900, feedback on it, and it's 100%. So right. I've never had a single negative comment for all the years that I've been on eBay. So I mean, if something that's needed, that I can always like default to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why early on, that was the one and only like link that we let you put into your CAF account profile was your eBay ID, because we always felt like there's at least something there. People who have nothing to hide are going to put their eBay ID in there so people can go look over there and see what their ratings are as buyers or potentially sellers. So at least they had a feedback system we could reference. So, and let's see. We did get a comment, both as a buyer and seller, all my experience about full steam ahead trust at the start. Did of course always check their gallery first, though. Again, I think that's the gold standard of credibility on CAF. If you have art in your gallery, you're probably on the up and up. So yeah, that's true. I mean, I've done it too. Whenever I get any kind of inquiry through CAF, even support questions, I almost always, if it's a question I think, how involved do I want to answer this question, I go check their CAF gallery just to see if I'm not familiar with their name, because sometimes it might be something that it just might not be something I want to wade into. But if they look like a serious collector, I'll take extra time because I want to make sure they're happy and content on the site. So cool. Well, that was a direction I didn't want to take the conversation, but it was good to chat about it. So let's keep looking at some art because somebody mentioned this is their favorite piece in your CAF gallery by Adam Hughes.
Yeah. So, well, obviously, it's an Adam Hughes. I mean, it kind of speaks for itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the story on this one is actually kind of interesting. It was like one of the San Diego prior to the show that I got this hat. So this was at North Carolina Comic Con. But the San Diego prior to that, I had stopped by Adam's booth and had a conversation with him and Allison. We were just kind of talking about art in general, and I was kind of flipping through what he had in terms of original art. And it's kind of like right when Game of Thrones was like really towards the peak of its like popularity. And so I just kind of like mentioned to Allison, I was like, hey, I would really like to get a piece from Adam at some time. I'd really like to get a Daenerys. And so she was like, well, if Adam gets some time, maybe he might be interested in doing that. If something comes up, I'll let you know. And I was like, okay. And I was like, hey, I saw you guys were going to be on here on the list to go to North Carolina, which I believe was like in November. So, San Diego's in July, so it's in November. And I was like, if he happens to be doing anything for that, just let me know. And she's like, yeah, if he decides that he wants to do something for that show, I'll let you know. And so, I was just kind of put the filler out there, just to see what would happen. And it was one of those things where a month before the show, Allison messages me on Facebook and is like, hey, Adam wants to do your Daenerys. And I was like, okay. And she's like, is this price okay? And I'm like, whatever. Whatever the price is, I'll figure out a way to pay it because, it's an Adam Hughes. And so I go to the show and he is, like working on it the first day. And so I spent some time, with him, like just watching him like lay it out and, put it down on paper. And so what I had, paid for was it's essentially a 14, it's like a 13 by 19 piece, I believe is how big it is. So it's a 13 by 19 and it was supposed to be in gray tones. And so as you can tell, it didn't end up being in gray tones. And so it was actually in gray tones when he was working on it the first day that I saw him working on it. And so the second day when I came back, because obviously he didn't have it finished on the first day, this is the only piece he really worked on the entire show. I came back and there was color on it. And I was like, hey, so, what's going on? What happened? Why is it in color? And he goes, well, so what happened is I was, wanting to put some red, just a little bit of red on her cheeks, just to give it a little bit of color against the gray tones. And I grabbed the wrong Copic and it was too much. And so there was no way to bring it back. And he said, so I was really actually just going to tear it up and start over again. But Allison said, no, don't do that. Don't, you've already gotten this far. Don't start over. Don't just tear it up and start it over. Just take it all the way to color. And so that's how I ended up with a full color piece. Like a total complete accident. So I ended up with this full color piece from Adam Hughes. Daenerys, I believe he's published it in one of his sketchbooks. It's also one of those pieces that, the scan is good, but it's like incredible in person. It's an amazing piece. So yeah, it was one of those things. It was like right place, right time. Having a decent relationship with Allison, and a little bit of a mistake, and you end up with this.
Yeah, no, you definitely lucked out. All from the wrong, marker in his hand. So hey, that's fine. I mean, at the end of the day, you ended up getting a really finished piece of art and didn't need to pay any extra for that. I mean, that's you can't ask for anything more than that. I mean, a full color piece from Adam. I mean, his gray tone pieces are beautiful too. I have one, a smaller one, but this thing is stunning. So yeah, congratulations.
Yeah, no, and like I said, it's one of those lucky things, in in terms of like seeing it in real person. I mean, you kind of see it on the scan a bit, but the way that he kind of like does the lighting, with the kind of the fire in the background, and how he does the lighting against the dress, and on the character herself. I mean, seeing it in person, it's just the way it's executed. I mean, Adam Hughes he's just a maestro, dude, when it comes to coloring stuff. It's amazing.
Nope, I completely agree. I mean, it's unfortunate that he's not going to be doing any work in our area for a while now, sadly. But I'm sure he'll be back. And but yeah, who knows when, right? But at least we have the great artwork that he's put out so far. So we got another Daenerys here. This one's not in color; it's all pencil on this one. And this was Adriana Mello, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So interesting. Yeah. So this one is all pencil, like the complete opposite of the other one, right? This is all done completely in pencil. And I mean, as you can tell, like the amount of detail that she put into this is insane. And this is one of those ones too, like it was early. This is one of my earlier Daenerys pieces. So, it was one of those ones where, again, my budget was a certain amount. And so this was a little bit on the higher end of what I was willing to spend at that time, but it was worth it. I had seen several other pieces that Adriana had done of other characters where she kind of had it done in this kind of style. And so, I just reached out to her, and I believe Adriana is like a Brazilian. So I reached out to her and was like, hey, I saw these other pieces that you've done. And I'd like to get a Daenerys piece from you. Is that something you'd be interested in doing? And she wrote back and was like, hey, I love that show. I would definitely want to do a Daenerys. And so it was one of those things where it's like she was super enthused about doing it. And so her enthusiasm, I think, is pretty obvious and apparent in this. And she ended up taking this and coloring it out digitally and selling it as prints. And I believe she also made T-shirts out of it as well that she was selling. So, it's from when it comes to pencil work and what someone can do with just depth and shading, just this work on the scales of the dragon, as well as the neck piece that she has on is, for somebody, it's one of those things where I wanted to highlight it because I don't think, Adriana gets she's not one of those people that a lot of people talk about, but she produces a lot of really beautiful artwork. And I think as a collector, if it's something that she's somebody that, you should look at, whether it's published work or commission work, because the stuff that she makes and can produce is incredibly beautiful.
No, it is gorgeous. And I can see why she might have turned that into some prints or other things as well, because she put a lot of effort into that one. And we have another Daenerys here. This time, of course, by the always incredible Mr. Mark Brooks. So
yeah,
you've got some good ones. This is a great one.
Yeah. So this one was also a kind of a funny one. So I said obviously in being in Atlanta, I go to Dragon Con every year, or ever since I've been living out this way, anyways. And so the interesting thing about Dragon Con is that, it's a smaller show from a standpoint of Artist Alley and, just the number of people who are there necessarily interested in that part of, the convention, because, Dragon Con is kind of a fan run convention. So they have all these different tracks and all these different things. So you have this large variety of people who are interested in a large variety of things. And there's a section of those people that are interested in the art side of it. So it's a good show, at least in my experience, to go to to be able to get pieces from artists that would be very difficult to get pieces from at a show like Heroes or at San Diego, where everybody is where the number of people who are going after art from those artists is a lot deeper and a lot denser. So in this case, like, so this was a time that Mark was at Dragon Con, and interestingly enough, I initially did not like put my name on his list because I didn't really think that it was something that was was going to happen. And so it ended up being one of my friends, and this actually one of the guys who now does work or is one of the founders of Comic Sketch Art. He was sitting there at Mark's table while Mark was out, and he was like, "Hey, come over here." And I was like, "What?" He goes, do you want to get something from Mark? And I was like, "Well, yeah, I'd like to get a Daenerys." And he's like, "Well, just put your name on the list at least." He goes, "Because he's just going to cherry pick the things that he wants to do." And so I ended up at his urging, putting my name on the list for Daenerys, and Mark picked it off the list. And so that's how I ended up with this piece.
Well, you got lucky there. Mr. Easy Go Lucky was curious about the year. I think you added it to CAF in 2013. Is that
I'm trying to think. I want to say maybe that's 15, 16, maybe. You probably could look and see,
but yeah, the link to Alan's CAF Gallery is in the show description. So if anybody wants to head on over there and check out his CAF Gallery, like Mikhail did earlier, and put some likes on art and comments as well, feel free.
So. Yeah, and the other thing about this too is like, so he finished it, he showed it to me, and then he's like, I want to say it was like on the Sunday, because Dragon Con runs through Labor Day, so it's also on Monday. So he showed it to me on Sunday. He's like, "Yeah, but I'm not going to give this to you yet because I'm going to take it home." Because I mean, he lives in the Atlanta area, so he wanted to take it home for us to scan it. So he took it home, scanned it, and then he ended up making some prints out of it as well. And then I ended up getting it the next day. And I believe the print is also like on the CAF, like if you want to see how because he colored that one himself digitally as well.
Yes, actually, I'm on your CAF. It is, you have the colored version and a photograph. And the photograph says Mark Brooks, Dragon Con 2013.
Oh, there you go.
So you saw it and you had it, and he wasn't ready to give it to you yet. So
yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. You had to sweat it out to make sure it made its way back into your hands before the show was over. Let's see. Here's another one. This one's awesome. This is, and I'm not familiar with the artist, Natalie Sanders.
Yeah, so that's also again, one of the reasons why I wanted to like pick this piece out. So interestingly enough, when it comes to like commission works, she was actually one of the first people that I ended up commissioning, and it was because I had seen some of her artwork on some covers for like Zenescope titles, and so I just liked the way that she kind of put pieces together, particularly because she almost exclusively only does women. So it was obviously that fit well with my character choices. So I like reached out to her and asked her if she would be interested in doing a commission piece. And so she kind of got the same choices that everyone else got, and so she wanted to do Daenerys. And so at the time, I want to say the pricing again was kind of like towards the upper part of what I would have paid for that at that time when I was in collecting. But for that price, this is a 14 by 17 piece, so it's a very large piece. And I know there's some like process pictures that I also included in my CAF gallery, so you kind of see how she laid it out. But to me, what like really makes this piece super amazing is just the texture work that she does on the dress. Like it's crazy, like how the depth and the like life that she can put into that dress, and the way that it kind of moves and flows, in the way that she did the painting on it. And then there's also that kind of like subtle, in the background there, you can kind of see there's like that silhouette of a profile of Daenerys's face in the background, which also that was kind of a nice kind of aesthetic that she added into it as well. So it's one of those things where, I mean, for an artist that doesn't have a lot of familiarity out there necessarily with the art community, is one of those people that I try to, if people are like, hey, is there somebody that is there an artist that that like maybe not very many people are aware of that has great art, I usually try to point people to her. I mean, she's also just a very nice person and very easy to work with as well. So but yeah, that's why I picked it. It's one of those things where it's just the execution of it and the texture work that she can do with it, to me was incredible. And it's somebody who is not someone who's talked about very often. So
yeah, I was just saying, she has about 55 pieces on CAF. So yeah, I wasn't really, I've seen the work browsing through CAF, but I never knew much about her. All right. Natalie, and that's Natali, just so everybody knows, Sanders. So if you want to, you can check her out in Alan's CAF, or just search on the site and you'll find some more pieces by her. Yeah, this is a published piece.
Yes. So yeah, this is actually a fairly recent edition. This is one of those ones I actually bought this through Jason at Essential Sequential.
Mm-hmm.
So I saw the preview of it when he was going to make this available, and so I had reached out to him ahead of time and was like, hey, because again, even now, with some of these pieces, especially when you're talking about published covers like this, the price ranges are such that maybe I don't, like, for me, I don't necessarily have that money right up front a lot of the times, especially if it's like, hey, surprise, we're going to drop this piece of art tomorrow. It's not something that I can prepare for,
Mm-hmm.
And so, I had reached out and was like, hey, if this piece, depending on the price is it possible to work, on some sort of like payment plan? And so, Jason emailed me back and was like, well, yeah, we can do that, but if somebody wants it and they can pay for it up front, that we would have to, offer it to them first. Which, I mean, I can understand that from a business standpoint, So I was okay with knowing that up front. So with that response, what I ended up doing is I ended up figuring out a way to kind of like move some money around, so that way when it did drop, I was just like, I'll buy it, and I ended up getting in on it first before anybody else claimed it. And the thing about this one, well, obviously, is I would say in my collection, when it comes to Bachalo art, I'm like probably like using a stock term, overweight on Bachalo art. I have several pieces from him. I like his aesthetic. And so this one kind of filled a couple or checked a couple boxes for me. One, I have a theme collection where it's a kissing theme collection where I collect pages where there are characters that are kissing in them. And so this fit in that theme. It also was a piece that, like, for me, I also like the character Elsa Bloodstone. So it was a nice cover to get her on the cover as well. So it was kind of like one of those things where I got a character that I really enjoy, an artist that I really like their art, and also fit a theme in my collection. So it's like kind of a nice thing that checked a whole bunch of boxes for me.
Sure. And Townsend is a good inker on Chris's work too. So that's a really nice piece. And looking at the color piece too, I mean, it's a nice cover all around, and with him crumbling away like that, it's gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. But money does talk, right? I mean, at the end of the day, when you're dealing with rep pieces of art or things on consignment, it's usually, if you got the cash, that's usually the way they'd rather go versus time payments. So it's always something to keep in mind.
It is. But I will say, though, that there are some reps out there, though, that are very good about understanding that not everybody can do that. And so there are some reps that I tend to buy more from, because they do have that flexibility optionality. And so mean, because in all honesty, like a lot of these published pieces, the nicer covers and stuff, I wouldn't be able to like buy all these if I didn't have the opportunity to be able to pay for them over time.
Sure.
And I mean, I think if you went through and you looked at my collection, you sorted it by year, and you saw like what I bought in the last, or within like the last couple of years, you'd see a lot more published stuff and a lot more covers. And that's just because that I happen to have been fortunate enough to have some reps who are easy to work with from that standpoint. And plus they know that I'm going to pay. And I try not, and that's something I tell any of the reps that I work with is like, hey, I'm going to tell you what I can do, and if that works for you, great. If it doesn't, then that's fine. But I'm not going to tell you something that I can't do, because I don't ever want to put something out there that I can't actually deliver on. So I will always err on the side of being conservative about the payment plans that I make, because I don't want to be in a position where I'm like, oh, I can't make this payment, because I don't think that's fair to them, or to the artist to be able to do that. So I try to be upfront about like, hey, because the thing is like, well, with a lot of these reps, because I've worked with them, I get stuff offered to me, but there's a lot of times I have to be like, look, I like that piece a lot, but I can't do it because, it just wouldn't work within, the way that my budget's set up, or I'm already paying off these other two pieces from you. So
I'm already making payments. They're like, but I'm trying to do you a favor. I'm trying to make sure you get first crack at this.
Yeah, and I do appreciate that, but I'm also, from my vantage point, I'm like, but I'm also trying to, also be honoring of,
my
arrangements with you, to make sure that I can live up to whatever it is that I promise you. So,
well, on that one piece, NSN Art did say that got their vote for best of last year in the cover category. So it was a well-respected piece added to your CAF gallery last year.
Yeah,
which is always good.
Yeah, well, I definitely enjoy it. Obviously, it's sitting back here on this wall. So.
All right, so this is a published piece. We got a cover. Let's see. So it's listed. It's a Hulk cover from 2008. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, it is. Which I thought was interesting, right?
Right.
Yeah. So this is again. I don't feel like this is an artist that a lot of people really talk about, but again, I'm like probably pretty overweight on art in my collection from this artist. This is Greg Tocchini, and I think there's another piece we'll see from him later, from a series that I just completely love. This was a piece, interestingly enough. So yeah, it's a Hulk cover, but it was at a time. And you can see that it says on the top that it's like X-Men Evolution, right?
Right.
So what was going on at that time in Marvel is it was around the time when X-Men First Class was coming out. And so as part of promoting it or celebrating it, Marvel did a series of covers across different series. So I think even like an Avengers title had a cover like this of an X-Men character. And what it was is they had different X-Men characters, and they would have the characters, and they called it evolution. And it would just be the character and their different outfits or appearance styles that they've had throughout time. And so in this case, this was the Emma Frost version that was done by Greg. And so, you get like the different variations of her costume, going from, left to right. And Greg's style is just very, to me, is very unique. Like if you see his art, I mean, at least for me, if I see it, I'm like, I know that's Greg's art. And this one was one of those ones where it was I got this from another collector. And it was one of those ones where, I reached out to them, and they had several pieces out there, and I was like, hey, I really want this Greg Tocchini art. Are you willing to get rid of it? And they were like, yeah. And so that's how I ended up with it. And because for me, finding art from Greg has been challenging. I just happened to be fairly lucky about stumbling across some pieces, and then also by being kind of active trying to find it. But I definitely didn't plan on finding this piece. This was purely like I just stumbled across it, and that's how I ended up with it.
Wow. Well, you've had a lot more luck than a lot of people when you're just making inquiries like that, because that's not the norm at all, right? I mean, typically people are going to be more inclined to just say no, it's not for sale. But you've kind of hit people at the right moment, which is unique. I mean, I don't know. Timing is everything, right, Ellen?
Yeah, no, it is. Oh, well, and yeah, several of these pieces are like that. I mean, there will be a couple other pieces that will come up later that are the same thing. I just happened to, I was looking for something very specific, and so I reached out to people to start the conversation, and then over time, whether it is right then or maybe some cases it would be like, yeah, I'm actually looking to buy something else, so I'm willing to part with this piece, because I think it's not just just me. I think in general, like people's the way they collect and the things that interest them, they evolve over time, right? And so I think for most of us as collectors, we feel okay about selling stuff that we have in order to put money back into art, right? So we're still keeping it in the community, so to speak, but we're also evolving with our own tastes.
Well, I mean, and that's kind of where we've been at the last few years. A lot of people are buying, so sometimes you gotta sell to be able to keep up the amount of with the art purchases you want to do.
Yeah, I see that. I see Kevin says the Last Days of American Crime. Yeah. No, I do have a Last Days page as well. But I mean, for me, like, why I liked Last Days and the art that's in it, like for me, when it comes to Tocchini art, like his work in Low is like chef's kiss, man. It's so good. It's incredible. That whole series, the artwork in it is amazing.
Well, we haven't heard chef's kiss on the channel before. Mm-hmm. That's I like that. I'm going to use that one day in the future, Alan. Thank you for But all right, well, yeah, let's see. The next piece is by this one's by Ryan Sook, right? This is a Magic Order Volume 2, Issue 5 cover.
Yeah, so this one was interesting because like anybody who's like tried to do a Felix art drop knows the pain of trying to get anything out of it, right? And so this was one from one of his cover drops, right? Which is like extremely painful to try to get anything out of because you're never fast enough, or at least I'm never fast enough to get it. And incidentally, on this particular one, on this drop, this was like the piece that I actually wanted the most because for like from an aesthetic standpoint, I didn't really have a Ryan Sook piece, and so I really wanted to find a nice one. And so I'm kind of in the stage where I'm like trying to find pieces to kind of fill out artist boxes, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And so this one was, I saw the preview of this one, saw it was out there, and there's just like so much going on in this piece that is like, especially when you like break it down like into different sections within the art piece itself. You've kind of got like the background, you got like the lightning going across, and there's this like little aesthetic with the girl playing with her stuffed animal, and Cordelia who's the main character of the series, is like front and center. And as you've seen with most of my collection, or almost exclusively with my collecting, that I focus primarily on collecting art that is around women characters. So so having her as the centerpiece, made it, one of those things where I had to get as well. And then you kind of got this like kind of weird, like these eyes that are out there kind of floating in it as well. And so, it was one of those ones where I was like, yeah, I really want that piece of art. It's gonna, kind of check that Ryan Sook box, and it's an amazing piece. And then I was like 5 minutes late to the Felix art drop. So, so I was like, there's no way I'm going to get this piece. Like, so I was like, I was just going to submit for it anyways and just wait for that rejection email and move along. And so I, submitted in for the piece. And then like, I want to say, half a day later, I hear back that I actually got it. And I was just like, how in the world did nobody else want to put in for this piece? Like, and then when I actually got it in the mail and looked at it, I was just like, this. I mean, it's again one of those pieces where like when you have it in your hand and you're looking at it, it is like an incredible looking piece. And so for me, I was just like, hey, I got lucky. It was one of those things where, maybe it was overlooked because there's some other, covers that were on that drop that maybe like drew a little bit more attention. And so, when you have those kinds of drops, I don't think you can just like put in for everything you want, because then if you end up getting more than what you put in for, then you're like, stuck in this spot. And I know, I'm pretty sure Felix has, been pretty upfront about saying that, if you're going to put in for something, you better make sure that you're going to get it.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's how I ended up with this piece. It was like, to me, it's just stunning that I was able to get it after being late to a Felix cover drop. It just didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, no, usually those are gone in, in the first 4 minutes. So yeah, I know. I've helped Felix go through a couple of his big art drops just to watch the number of, emails he gets in the first 60 seconds, 90 seconds, 2 minutes. It's always fun to watch as a bystander. And, we've done that because when we were doing some of his tests on his site, just to see, is it performing this up to par with what we expect? Are the emails coming out, properly? And cover drops are by far probably the most busiest, except when he does like multiple issue drops for somebody like Daniel Warren Johnson or something like that. But the cover drops are always very busy. So you definitely looked out. And this is a great piece. We featured this on one of the CAF updates. I'm not sure if it was Chris or I that picked it, but it was one of our top picks of the week when it was posted to CAF. So yeah, it's a stunner. I love Ryan's work. I always have. But the detail on this one is just, I mean, it blew my mind when I saw it. So definitely, I think you've checked the Ryan Sook box.
Yeah, no, yeah, I was definitely very, very, very happy with that piece. So yeah, and like I said, I mean, the Felix, the cover drops, they're definitely brutal. I would say the only other Felix drop that I feel is like probably more brutal are the Brian Lee O'Malley drops. Like, obviously
those
as a Scott Pilgrim collector, those things are like completely brutal.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I've tried on a couple of those myself actually, and always have not gotten anything. I was gifted a piece, fortunately, by someone last year, because they knew I missed out on the last one, and I actually I have one piece that I have not opened yet. I was supposed to open it last Thursday, and now I've got three packages to open on the CAF update on Thursday, but one of them has a piece of Scott Pilgrim art in it. So
okay.
Yes. So I've always loved his work, and Scott Pilgrim is one of my favorite movies too. I rank it right up there next to Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. I can watch either of those movies at any time, and I will always have a smile on my face, for no matter what mood I was in prior to watching either of those.
That's hilarious.
Those are my two go-tos, everybody.
Yeah, it's pretty much just about any Kevin Smith movie is like, I can watch about over and over again.
Agreed. All right, well, here we're going to switch over to a color piece this time, and this is from Why the Last Man, of course, issue 40 cover. Carnavale.
Massimo Carnavale. So obviously, Why, again, is a series that I mean, I think it's pretty much beloved by most people who've actually read it. As a series that I enjoyed immensely. And so it was one of those things where, when there was like talk about the show coming out, which, it only lasted the one season, but the interesting thing about it is, having actually watched the show, I actually thought it was, pretty well done. And so it was a little bit disappointing that they didn't carry it on, but when all the talk was out there about them making a show, it was one of those things where it's like, I really would like to have, a piece of Y art, particularly a cover, if I could get one to have in my collection. And so there was about, having looked at all the different covers that they had, there were 3 or 4 of them that particularly stuck out to me, that I'm like, if I could get one of these 4 covers, that I would be, extremely happy to have it in my collection. This happened to be one of the 4 covers, and it was, again, one of those things where it was during COVID. And so I had a lot of time again to kind of like see what was out there. And this was in someone else's collection. And so I reached out to them and said, hey, look, I really love this cover. And if it ever comes to a time that you decide that you are willing to part with it, that you, are interested in moving it, that I would be interested in buying it and adding it to my collection. And so the owner came back and said, look, I actually am trying to want to buy another piece. And so I am willing to let this one go in order to, get some capital to put towards something else. And so we worked out a price that was, fair to both of us. And this collector, as you could probably imagine, this wasn't on like the cheaper end. No. So this collector was, good to work with in terms of like doing a couple payments in order to, pay it off. And so that's how I ended up with this one. And again, it's like one of those things where for me, the aesthetic of it, and part of the reason why I liked it is because, it kind of it's got that, like homage feel to it, to that, Michelangelo piece that this is referring to. So, and, again, my theme of my collection for the most part is women characters, and so you kind of got this as I like to call her Other Beth, because it's not Beth, it's Beth 1B, I guess, and so that's how I ended up with this cover.
Well, it is gorgeous, and once again, you had that you had good timing with a collector, and your inquiry. It just seems like you've got a little magic, Alan, as far as like getting the that right moment to talk to somebody. But Mikhail did have a question. He said, "Wonderful, so captivating. Is this one of the frame pieces that you have, or is it in a portfolio?"
It's in a portfolio right now. So it's not because I don't want to frame it. It's really more to do with the. I'm trying to think of the best way to frame this. It has more to do with the subject matter of the art itself. Like, so while it was a piece that I did want to have put up, out here, it was vetoed. And so that's the only reason why it's not up on the wall.
But you wish it could be.
Yeah,
I get it. Well, I'll tell you, when I first saw it, I mean, I didn't read Y the Last Man. I hate to say it. That's I'm going to have to fix that, because every time it's talked about, everybody's like, you got to read it. So I blame myself. But at first, when I looked at it, I thought those were timepieces. They look like little, watch on a chain. And then as I'm looking at it, I'm like, those aren't watches.
Yeah, no, I was laughing at Marcus's comment because
I saw that
that's exactly what it is.
Yeah. So you can't even hang that one in the man cave, unfortunately.
Yeah, maybe in the closet with all the pull-out drawers.
Well, we all have pieces like that would get vetoed for hanging on the walls. I think. I mean, that's just kind of how it goes. But I mean, the color palette on that piece is just stunning. Those monkeys, with the magenta and that rich blue and the reds. I mean, my gosh, what a crazy color choices on those. But it's just brilliant. I mean, the piece is stunning. So I can tell why you really want it, because it's you're all about the art. I mean, and that that's a wonderful work of art.
Yeah, no, that's for me. Like, a lot of it's about composition and aesthetic, right? And so that's why there are like 3 other covers in that run that I really want. There's one I know where 2 of them are. There's one that I haven't found yet, and it's incidentally the one that I probably would want the next most, but I have no idea where it's at. So maybe I'll come across it someday. Who knows? We'll see.
Yeah. Well, you got to put it out there. Do you have like a want list on CAF where you kind of list things like that?
Yeah. So that's an interesting topic. I actually was thinking about that the other day, because I know there's the function that's out there for want list, but I just don't really know if people really use it a whole lot. So on my CAF gallery, if you go onto it, there's a favorite folder that I have, and it's actually called something like "If You Ever Want to Part with These Favorites." And
That's
so
one way to do it.
yeah, so I put stuff, in there, like, so I'll so it shows up as a favorite, but it's also the folder title is such, like, when you look it up and you're like, you put your, you're looking at where your art's saved at, it clearly says, hey, if you ever want to get rid of this, then to let me know. And so I actually have had a couple of pieces that have come about because of that too, as well. Like where I've had the owners who have come back and said, hey, I saw that you had this in this folder. And so, I'm actually ready to move on from this piece. It's not something, that fits my collection, or I'm streamlining in my collection or whatever it is. So I've actually gotten a couple of pieces that way. So that's actually the reason why I named it that way, just in case,
Well, Alan, there are 210 pieces in that favorites, room of yours. So if everybody all at once wanted to sell, you're in trouble. But
yeah, well, then that's when you have to kind of like, arbitrage.
Yeah, and it's good that I browsed in here, because I actually see a bug on CAF because of and it's ringing a bell why it's there, but I'm gonna have to have Maureen fix that tomorrow morning. So I'm glad you mentioned it. It's nothing major. It's like some of the art shows a view count and other ones don't. And I know that there was an issue out there, but this is a page we probably didn't look at to fix that issue. For all the pages on CAF where view counts would be shown, I bet you we never looked at the favorites room to see that, because most of the art, like on that first page, landing page here of that, has counts, but there's a couple pieces that say 0, and then you click on them and there's 3,200 views on that art. So a bug has been found, thanks to you, Alan.
All right. Well, always doing my best to improve CAF.
Yes. And I don't know how many people use the want list too, as well. I mean, I think if we made it more obvious as a tool, I think people would probably have a bit more interest in that, or if we gave people who are looking to sell art an easy way to like find people who might be interested in buying this artwork by just clicking a button, and it could bring up a list of 5 people that say, they're looking for, artwork by Joe Weems or whatever. So, that might make it a more handy tool than having to go over there and search it. But if we could come up with a real quick and easy way for you to potentially find a buyer for a piece of art without having to work for it, that would probably be a pretty decent benefit to creating a want list then. So something to think about.
Yeah, I mean, because I actually have put some stuff on the want list. Like I particularly did it like earlier on when I was on CAF. I haven't used it as much, that I've like just started using that folder and just putting stuff in there as my favorites, because it seems like I wasn't sure exactly how that want list was going to function in terms of like, getting people to, or, like you said, making that connection. Right.
Right.
And so that's kind of why I haven't like invested as much time in that one. I know that I have gotten like people to respond to things that I put into my favorites gallery or in that particular folder. So, I'm always trying to figure out ways that I can, at least put it out there. Hey, this is something I'm looking for. If you come across it, and try to figure out what the most effective or efficient way to do it is. So yeah, I mean, I think if I maybe understood, how that want list could work,
better. Yeah, I'll work on that. We're doing a lot of brainstorming these days here at CAF HQ. So I'll think more on that, definitely. So let's see, next piece of art, and I think this is one a few people wanted to see. This is a piece by let's see, Sandman University, Nightmare Country issue 1, a Jenny Frison variant, gorgeously done.
Yeah, so this is I believe it's the 1:100 variant for that issue. And well, like Jenny Frison, like her art in general, I'm just a big fan of. I have a couple pieces from her, and I actually have at least one other piece that is coming from her as well. This was one of those ones where when I saw the preview for this, like I immediately like asked for this. And so I just happened to be the first person to inquire about it, and that's how I ended up with it. And obviously, a lot of the appeal for this is that it's a Sandman cover that features death, and it's just got, I mean, the way that Jenny draws, female characters, and like just the simplicity of this, comparative to like some other art like covers that are maybe a little bit more busy is I think what makes this one work really well. And then, you have that kind of just always super creepy Corinthian skull there as well. That just kind of like really puts this one kind of over the top for me. So it's just a really, beautiful yet simple execution of a character that is, like my favorite character in that universe. And it was an opportunity to get something that was published too, as well. And like, so Jenny is one of those people who also doesn't like do a ton of like commissions. So getting nice covers from her is about as good as it's going to get when it comes to her.
Yeah, no, this is stunning. I mean, and I agree. She really draws a beautiful woman, and this is creepy elegance, as Rick mentions. But yeah, no, it's gorgeous. But it sounds like so you do a lot of when we talk about buying strategies and everything, you're quick to reach out if you see something you like that might be coming available. So, and you've certainly, it sounds like, maintained good relationships with a lot of reps too, or and that's probably helped you get a few of the pieces. And once you have a history with somebody, like you said, some of the reps or agents will come to you and say, hey, here's a piece of art I think you might want. Even so it's really, really important to maintain those good standing relationships with reps out there.
Yeah, no, yeah, for sure. Yeah, and so so a couple things before leaving the Frison piece. The one other thing I for people who don't like buy or have never bought Frison art before, the thing that's also kind of unique about her is that if you buy her artwork, her cover artwork, she does it on two pieces. So you get a penciled piece from her, and then you also get the tone piece, which is the one that was just shown by Bill. So anytime you're buying something from her, you're actually getting two pieces of artwork for the most part. So just something to keep in mind if you're like ever in the market for a Frison piece. But to your point, as far as like the like reps, so yeah, in this case, Frison is one of Cadence's artists, and so I have a pretty good relationship with those all the guys over there at Cadence, and part of it is that I'm quick to reach out on these things, but there are times that they've also reached out to me on some things because they have a pretty good feel for what I like and what kind of aesthetic I go for, and part of the reason I work with them too is, again, they're very good about working with payment plans and stuff, because they know not all of us can just pony up the kind of money that we're talking about.
Sure.
So yeah, so like that piece, and I think I have a Poison Ivy piece from Frison that also was something that I was kind of all in the same purchase. And then I actually have a piece coming. I'll be picking it up in New York probably. It's an Azra piece. It's the first Azra piece that I will have had. So it's going to check that box. And that's also one I'm like super excited about, because it's like it was one of those ones, again, like I saw it and I was like, I want that cover. And so I immediately said, hey, tell me if this is available and just tell me the price. And so that's how I ended up getting this cover. And so you'll probably see it out in the gallery sometime in the next couple of months.
Well, the Poison Ivy cover is also gorgeous. And you also have a Ramona Flowers and a Daenerys piece. So yes, another person you got two from. You still need one more.
Yeah. Again, she doesn't do a whole lot of commission work anymore. So It's very, very difficult. If you're lucky, maybe you might catch her and she might be able to squeeze one in, but she's not somebody who does a lot of them anymore.
Well, nicely done though on those. You have 5 pieces in your CAF. You're going to have 6 soon, so that's pretty cool. And we're going to switch over to a John Bolton piece. This is from God Save the Queen. Yeah,
so John Bolton is one of those artists who I just love his work with the paints, man. He's just so good. And a lot of the pieces that you can get from there's a lot of things out there that are a little bit more what I would characterize as mainstream. So maybe your like Batman, Man Bat series. That's the one that kind of sticks out to mind. I know he did, like Army of Darkness, and Evil Dead, those kind of that series as well. There's a lot of pages out there from that, and then several covers from like I believe it's like Alien, Alien vs Predator and that stuff as well. So, and then obviously, he's got that. What is the? I get all these like characters that like those like warrior women characters. The one that he created as well is also like the one that a lot of people kind of go for.
I think I know. Yeah, I'm trying to remember the name as well.
I get them all mixed up. So
it'll come to me. I'll actually do it. I'll Google it while we're talking.
Yeah. So in this case, like he's done a lot of other things out there that have been like great as well. That I just think are just titles that people aren't super familiar with. And so, and talking with, with Liliana, about, what it is that they have, a lot of it was just like, well, what is it that you're interested in? And so, I just started, sending over, pages of from these smaller titles or like lesser known titles that I just loved, and to see what they actually still had. And this was one of the pieces they had. And then so it was one of those ones where it's like, oh, hey, this is just a beautiful page. It fits my theme collection, the kissing theme collection. It's a full page splash. And it's just so well done. Like John Bolton does things, I mean, even the way that he, in this case, it's even framed like a picture, right? Because you have, it's just very clean up front with the characters, but then the background is like, blurry, like you would get with that kind of filter look. And so it was one of those pieces that, again, I get a full page splash from John Bolton, and it fits a theme. It's just a beautifully executed piece. The way that the characters are, are set up, in the way that they're kind of the posing of the characters is just so well done. And it's one of those ones where I was like, hey, to me, it made sense to like highlight this. I have a lot, again, John Bolton is probably another artist that I'm a little overweight on pieces as well.
I was just going to say the same thing. Yeah. I think you have 11 pieces in your CAF from John.
Yeah, but I'm also very happy to be overweight on John Bolton pieces.
Right.
So.
Oh no, I love John's work, and yeah, every piece in your CAF is stunning by John. I mean, they're all fantastic. Wow. No, and I had no idea. I kind of browsed through your CAF, but I didn't realize you had that many John Boltons in there. That's great. No, I've always loved his work. Wow. Let's see. What is the next piece? Oh, I remember Mr. Rizzo piece here.
Yeah. So
very, very cool.
Yeah, no, 100 Bullets, again, I guess another series, so we were talking about why are there 100 Bullets is another series where it's like, one of those series that, I just love it. It's just such a, it's like the crime noir, super gritty. But getting pages that are good from it is very challenging. And so this is one of those pages that I actually was able to get directly from Rizzo, and it checked a lot of boxes for me because it's a page that features Megan, who's the character that again, for my collection purposes, focus on women, and she's just such a great character in the series. And then just the framing of like the different panels in this page is so good, like the top panel where you have this kind of overlooking they're overlooking Megan, who's got her has her foot in the pool, and then you got the panel where it's like her face in the sunglasses, and you get the reflection off of the sunglasses. There's just so much stuff going on here that Rizzo does so well, not just from a framing standpoint, even like little subtle things, like the palm trees in the background, and the way that he uses like lighting and negative space is just so good on this piece. And so, it's from a great series. Rizzo, I think, in my opinion, he like his pages and his artwork, especially when you get like interior pages, they really shine because he's so good with the inks and the way that he uses the lighting to bring things out. And so in a lot of ways, I prefer like the black and white versus what the color work is done in a lot of the published stuff, because it's just so well done.
No, this is one of the cooler layouts, that I saw from the pieces you selected, and and even in a while, you look at that fourth panel that isn't really a panel; it bleeds in from the first panel where he's pouring the drinks, and how that non-panel actually kind of go, the floorboards go underneath the final panel. I mean, it's just really, really uniquely laid out. I mean, there's so much thought that was involved in pulling this piece together, and yeah, I mean, who else but Risso could pull off something this unique? And you just don't see this sort of style very, very often, or people taking these kind of chances. But man, I mean, I love this page. I mean, it is fantastic. I mean, wow. I'm in the same boat. I've seen a lot. I actually have never owned anything by Risso, but I've always been looking for a piece, and it's tough because every piece is good, right? But it's just like, I'm try to find one like this that just really, like you said before, checks all the boxes. I mean, this piece would definitely check all the boxes on a Risso piece for me, because it's just stunning. Wow. I mean, so congratulations on this one. Yeah, this is great. Really, and there's only one comment on it. I don't know how that's possible, but it was left by Jeff Singh. So one of the guys with some of the best taste in art on CAF has left the one and only comment on there. So somebody's got to fix that and add a few more tonight.
No, Jeff definitely has some great taste in art. He's got some amazing stuff in his collection.
Oh my gosh, yeah, he does. But yeah, that's a great Risso. I'm very envious of that. That is exactly what I would be looking for if I could ever find a good one like that to add to my CAF. Okay. So this is a DPS from Low.
Yep. So this is great Tocchini again. Like I just love his art. I just part of the reason I want to highlight him, because I feel like he's like almost criminally underappreciated. For as great of an artist as he is. And Low, if you've ever read the series, I mean, you could probably not read a single thing in that book and just look at the pictures and you would still be like amazed. And so the thing about Low, though, is that most of the artwork that's in the book is digital. So there's very few traditional pieces that are, are traditional pages from the series at all. And so they're the ones that are out there are very difficult to get a hold of and difficult to find. I just happen to have a couple of them, and this is the one that I wanted the most of the ones that were available, had become available. And so it's a DPS, and it is at a point where you get to see the characters, and this point of the story, if I remember correctly, is they're basically it's there's this mech suit that they're the villain of the story is getting into, and so one of the protagonists of the story is trying to figure out a way to escape, and so they're kind of in this on the left-hand side portion of it, where they're kind of like imprisoned, and they have all these other characters and stuff basically like taunting them and stuff as they're trying to figure out how to escape from this particular situation. So just the way that Greg does his artwork with shading and depth, and the way he uses the watercolor and stuff is very unique, and his aesthetic to me is just like also very unique to him. And so this was just like a really great page from that series, and it's one of the few traditional ones that you can actually get.
Wow, I mean, it's stunning that the tonal work in the ink, is just it's beautiful. I mean, it really is. I mean, you don't see that much attention to detail in ink washes like that, but it's gorgeous. I mean, you really scored a wonderful piece here.
Yeah, what the funny thing is too about it, because most of the artwork is digital on it, I'm like I know there's like always been, or at least recently, there's been a lot of discussion around like mono prints and digital art,
Mm-hmm.
and the values around that. I like, for me personally, I haven't really like dove all the way in on this whole idea of like monoprints or one of ones or APs, but there are a few pieces of my collection that are monoprints or one of ones, because they were just pieces that I just liked the art so much, and if there's the only way that I was going to be able to own it, then I was okay with that in those particular circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
And so with Low, I do have a couple of the one of ones from the series, just because it's a series that I just like, love the art in. And if knowing that almost all of it is digital, those are the only ways that those that the art is going to be available to be displayed, then I was happy to throw some money Greg's away to get those pieces. And I mean, they also do have like nice little remarks of the main characters on each of them as well. So
Well, that's good. I always felt like if they're remarked, at least there's something, something original on it. And I think I haven't bought a monoprint yet. I don't know if I ever will, but I understand where you're coming from. At the end of the day, like you just said, you want to support the artist too. Sometimes, if that's their medium of choice and this is the only piece of art that you're going to be able to get from that. I mean, I think that I have no problems with it. It may not be something that I might want to do, but I completely respect that. And I think that it comes from a good place. It's something that the work that you really admire, and you want to support the artist as well. And if that's the way you got to do it, then there's nothing wrong with that. So I'm not anti monoprints at all. It's just, for me, it's like when we were talking about NFTs, I'm like, well, that's for somebody, but it's just not for me. It's just not. And I think every collector, it's going to be different. And as our hobby evolves, over time, and more, more artists become digital, and less traditional. I mean, we're all going to have to like second guess things, or we're all going to be competing for the traditionally done original pieces. And, who knows what that's going to do to the market. So, yeah, I mean, you just got to evolve or die. So,
yeah. Well, like I said, I just generally am not there. It's that this one is like one of the handful of exceptions, so I want to say like maybe I have 3 or 4 total monoprints and everything, and I've passed on a lot of them because when I found out that those are the only way you can get the art pages, and as much as I like the pages, it's still hard for me to be like, yeah, I'm going to spend the same amount that I would pay for a traditional page to get a monoprint. That's still, unless I like really love the page and it's like super like a unique circumstance, I still would have a hard time pulling the trigger on it. So yeah, it's truly an exception, but
I like the idea that those were remarked. I mean, I think that does add something to it, at the end of the day. And I think that's, if I was going to buy one, I would almost have to say that it would have to have something drawn on it for me to want to go and buy it. So yeah. So let's take a look at this piece by Colleen Doran. Very, very erotic and nice snow glass apples graphic novel. We actually highlighted this on CAF. This was a featured piece back in it was in 2021, early in the year, like March or something. But I love Colleen's work. This is really, I love published pages where people just kind of throw away the whole panel grid layout and just sort of do their own thing. I mean, and you look at this and it's all that, right? I mean, you don't need to do that. It's just so beautiful.
Yeah. And yeah, Marcus, this is on the wall actually. So so the interesting thing about this one, so I actually got this at Heroes. And when Colleen was set up, and it was one of those things like, because Heroes is such a great show to just like wander around and look through everybody's stuff. And I was over at Colleen's table and flipping through her book, and there was these pages in there, and I was asking her about it. I was like, hey, what are these pages from? And so at the time, this hadn't actually been published. So she was explaining to me like, hey, this is called Snow Glass Apples, and this is it's a project that I was working on with Neil Gaiman, and it's going to come out in September, I think is where it was at the time. And Heroes is in June, so and so I was flipping through, and she had a lot of the pages from it, and this was like one of the ones that like just the layout of it and the way that it's executed. And I preface that by saying that just about every single page in that book or in that story is incredible. Like the way the work that she did in that book is just amazing. It's so well laid out. Every single page is one that I would be happy to have owned. Obviously, I couldn't afford all the pages in the book, so this is the one that I settled on at the show to pick up. I ended up getting this one, and then there was actually another. It was an unused cover that was really kind of like done like a prelim, and so she had the whole story, and it's actually published in the book as well as an unused cover with the explanation for why it was unused as well. And so this was one of those ones where it wasn't even published. I just happened to flip through the book and got in on the page before it was published, and I think it ended up like subsequently going on to win like several awards. I think it was like a Bram Stoker award. I want to say there was like a Eisner with it as well. And the awards that won were definitely it definitely deserved them, because like I said, there's from like front to back, it would be hard to find a book that matches the art in Snow Glass Apples from front to back, page for page, because it's just so well done. And so and there's actually another page that I bought later on to add that was also from this book. But I mean, I'd be happy to own many more pages from that book. It's just the entire book's beautiful. So
well, no, it's a good choice. Yeah, I'm looking at your CAF. I see the other page too. I mean, that's stunning as well. And and again, a really unique page layout on it. So no, Colleen's awesome. She's one of my favorites out there. I'd love to interview her one day. That would be a highlight for me. She's done some amazing work in her career. The Stelfreeze is the next one. And this one's behind you too.
Yeah, this one is behind me. So yeah, I mean, it's a Stelfreeze, so that's me in and of itself and a reason to highlight it. But beyond that, I mean, this is just such I can't even explain what this looks like in person. It's just so incredible. I mean, the scan, kind of shows you a little bit of what's going on. But this is one of those ones I also got at Heroes. And so, I didn't have a Stelfreeze and I wanted to get one. And so, I made sure that, I got in line as early as I could to get on his list. And so I gave him the choices. And so when I gave him the choices, he was like, he took about, a minute to think about it. He's like, you know what? I think I want to do Ramona. He goes, I have a really good idea about what I want to do. And so I was like, okay, let's do it. And so, I came back on Sunday and he handed this to me, and I was just like, just aghast, because just the way that he uses the colors and how he blends them. I mean, even his signature is multicolored. I mean, it was just crazy. It was just mind blowing to me to try to think about how he even executed getting this piece onto the paper. But it's Brian Stelfreeze, and when you put paints in his hands, he can do some pretty amazing stuff. And so to me, this was like one of those like really unusual, unique pieces that you probably would never see anybody else do. And it's, there's nothing else that I've seen that's even come close to, like in terms of like presentation to what this looks like. I mean, it's just an incredible piece.
Yeah, this is, completely amazing. I mean, I've always wanted a Stelfreeze, and I've just, the thing is, I never have even approached him about getting one, because I know every time, if you're not there early, his lists are it's going to be full. And so I've never even tried. I've had a few friends, of course, who've tried, but I haven't. I just figure, maybe I'm gonna get lucky one day and I'll be able to buy a piece that was pre-done versus waiting in line. But pieces like that are just amazing. And yeah, it's so unique. His talents are just amazing. His color choices, a Stelfreeze the moment you see the color palette. Doesn't matter what the subject matter is. So yeah, I love that, and I can see why. I mean, it should be on your back wall forever.
Yeah, no, it will be. It's like I said, it's. I mean, I had no idea what I was going to get when he decided to do Ramona, and that was definitely not what I thought I was going to get in a good way.
Right. Oh heck yeah! No, I would have been thrilled with that because it looks like it's simple, right? But it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, when you take that, there's nothing simple about that piece. So yeah, that's a stunner. But now we're going to switch to Mr. O'Malley.
Yeah. So.
Oh man, this is so cool.
Yeah, like obviously, if I'm gonna collect Ramona Flowers pieces, I've got to have a Brian Lee O'Malley Ramona Flowers piece in my collection, right?
You do, yes.
So I mean, even beyond like the published pieces that that I've bought over time. So interestingly enough, on this one, so I got this through Felix, but it was on it was 2016, so I mean, it was a drop, like. But probably a little bit before it was like super frenzy-ish, but still very challenging to get artwork from him because it's still O'Malley. So in this case, this is the one piece I wanted in the entire drop because it was a full figure Ramona Flowers on like 11 by 17. It's not like something you get every day from Brian Lee O'Malley, and besides, it's got bricks in it, right? Which apparently is like the most important thing in art.
It is a thing around here.
Yeah. So, but the funny thing about this one too is that when I put in for it, I was not the person who was first to get this piece. I was actually second. And so Felix, he sent me the rejection email, but he was like, but you were next. So if it falls through, then we'll let you know. And so like half a day later, I get an email back from Felix and said the other buyer decided not to buy it and it's yours if you want it. And I was like, yes. Yes, I want it. Just send me the invoice right now. And so that's how I ended up with this one. It's like one of those ones where I just got lucky that someone else, beat me to it, but then they decided they didn't want it. So, I was happy to take it from them.
Yeah, no, I mean, their loss was your gain. I mean, that's awesome. Like we talked about, I mean, those O'Malley art drops are so tough. And that's why I feel really fortunate that to have gotten a couple pieces. Cause yeah, as with, like you said, most Felix art drops are tough, but the O'Malley ones, the cover ones, I mean, so you were fortunate. And again, here you go. You lucked out, right? You were second. And it still ended up coming to you. So that was fate right there. That it ended up in your CAF.
Yeah, no, it was. And like I said, it's not leaving my collection. It's you just don't see pieces like that of Ramona Flowers. He just doesn't do them very often. So.
No, this is it's gorgeous. That's I'd love to get just a pinup piece like that. As well, but those are the tough ones, because I do. Those are kind of the ones that I look for when the art drops have happened, and but yeah, they go so fast.
Yeah, and that's why I think there was one other piece of Ramona that I added not too long ago, but it's actually one that I got off of Heritage. Wow. And for what I paid for it, I felt like it was more than considering like the amount of effort I would have to put into it to get it on a Felix drop. And, so to me, like the amount that I ended up paying for it wasn't like, I didn't even feel like it was even remotely painful to pay that amount. So,
based even with on the buyer's premium, it didn't bother you.
Yeah, no, not at all.
No, well, that's good. I mean, and Heritage, we always talk about the great sales that they have, but I mean, there's a lot of things that kind of slip through the cracks there. A lot of people I've heard of a few people even recently putting their $1 bids in just to have a tracking bid and winning an item. I mean, it does happen on the weekly auction sometimes where you can score a nice piece of art for a pretty under market value thing. Those opportunities happen. I mean, they aren't I guess they're more the exception to the rule anymore, but I've seen some decent buys come out of the Heritage Weekly auctions in the last year, where you'd think that it should just never happen anymore, but it does. So, but I didn't see an O'Malley on a Heritage Weekly auction, or I would have been competing with you, Helen.
Yeah, no, that's why I was surprised. Like I said, the final price on it was like the amount that I put for my max was like way above what I paid for it. I'll just put it that way.
Right.
I mean, like way.
Well, that's a good feeling then, right? Because you knew what you were willing to pay, and it didn't even come close to that. So yeah, that's awesome. Well, congratulations. I mean, I love hearing that with all, because whenever we do a recap, we're always talking about those things that surprise us because they were too high. We don't talk about things that surprise us because they were a deal. And but they are out there. They definitely are out there. That's cool. Let's see, we got 2 more pieces here to look at, and I mean, if you got an Art Adams in your CAF, you got to talk about it. So so how long did it take you to get an Art Adams? Tell me.
Well, I mean, in like the years of collecting, I actually got this one, I would say, fairly early on in collecting. 2015. So and this was also at Heroes. So it was one of those. This one was a kind of a interesting one in the sense that I actually had reached out to Art prior to Heroes and just said, hey, look, I saw you're going to be at Heroes. Are you possibly taking any commissions? Not expecting really to hear anything back, but he actually emailed back and was like, yeah, I'm going to be doing commissions at the show. What is it that you want? And so in this case, I just said, hey, look, I just want to get a Savage Line Road. So he's like, so he wrote back and said, okay, I'll put you on the list. So I was like, okay, so does that mean I'm getting a piece or am I not getting a piece? I'm not sure. And so when I got to Heroes, I went by his table to talk to him, and I was like, hey, I emailed you and asked about this. He's like, oh yeah, I've got you on the list. You're number 7. And I was like, he's like, so, if I get it done, it'll probably be done on Sunday. And so I was like, okay. So I was, not completely sure that I was actually going to get a piece. Because, being number 7 on Art's list, Art, he is usually very methodical about working through his pieces. And so I was expecting that he might maybe get like 4 or 5 done for the, 3 days of Heroes. And so I showed up on Sunday at his table, not really sure what to expect. And this actually happened to be like right around Father's Day, because that's how I remember it. Mm-hmm. And so I showed up at his table, and he's like, oh yeah, I finished yours. And he like pulls it out of his folder, and I was like, oh my God. Because it was just like, especially, that early on in collecting, for me, I was like, I'm getting an Art Adams and the Savage Land Rogue. And it's just like, I mean, if anybody who's ever seen an Art Adams piece that he does like that, they all know that, the way that he puts it on paper, when it's in your hand, you're looking at it, there's no scan that can ever do it justice. And so this was one of those ones where I got it, and it was like around Father's Day. So it was like, happy Father's Day to me kind of thing. And yeah, so obviously it's also one of those ones that is not ever going to leave my collection, because it's just not, it's the first one I've got from him, and in all honesty, it would be very difficult. It's gotten a lot more difficult to get Art Adams pieces nowadays, and so I don't know if I'll ever end up getting another one or not. And so even if I don't, having this one is perfectly I'm perfectly content with that because it's just a piece that I love. So.
Have you ever tried to get on his sketch list since then, or was that the one time?
Well, I mean, I've tried. So, I've actually talked with him several times in the past about doing a Daenerys. And it's been one of those things where he's like, well, if I have time, yeah, just keep bugging me about it. So I will like occasionally check in with him and, say, hey, the schedule changed, expecting it to be like, no, because he's been busy. I mean, it's been pretty obvious. He's been putting a lot of stuff out there.
Yeah.
I know he's been doing some of those things, but I wasn't asking for one of the smaller pieces. I was like, I'm willing to pay to get, one of the larger pieces. And actually, at first, when I brought up, part of the reason why I ended up with Savage Land Rogue, actually, is because when I talked about the possibility of doing Daenerys at the time, he was like, well, I don't feel really comfortable doing likenesses. And so I don't really want to do it because, Game of Thrones, again, was popular at the time. So a lot of times when you ask for characters, people are like, oh, well, then you want a likeness. And I was like, so, one of the things I told him was like, no, I don't actually want a likeness. I want the character, in your interpretation. And so when we kind of got past that, then he was a little bit more open to like, yeah, just kind of keep bugging me. And so I'm hoping maybe one day that I'll like
he didn't
bug
tell
him.
you no.
Yeah, and he won't, and he'll be like, yeah, you know what? I think I'm gonna do it. Because I think what I said one time was like, look, I just want art. I just want your chick and a dragon. It's like, call it good. It doesn't have to be a likeness. So yeah, that's maybe one day I'll get one. But if I don't ever get another Art Adams, I'll be fine with it.
Yeah, it
but
gives you
I'm
a reason
always
to
like
reach out to him once a year, so that that's something fun in and of itself. He's on your list to kind of go back to every now and again to ask him about that. Mark was asking about his stylistic way that he draws women's faces. I mean, I don't know. That's kind of been his everybody has a different style. That's art style, and that's kind of why if you like the way he draws women, then you're gonna enjoy getting a piece from him. So yeah, but I mean, he's had that kind of look to women's faces for a long time. But I mean, it's unique to art. I mean, it's why we love the way he draws. So yeah.
And I think that's also part of the reason why he was like, the whole conversation around likeness, right? Because he has his own style, and that's that's part of the thing is when I choose these characters, I want artists to draw them in their style. Now, if they want to do a likeness, that's fine. That's their prerogative. But I mean, I generally give an artist free reign to execute, the commission however they want to do it. Because at the end of the day, I just want to see this character in their style. Yeah, go. So I was like, you be you. You know what I mean? Just do what it is what you do, and that's
and
what
you know
I
what. This last piece is actually a good piece to end on because it is the last piece for the night, but something done very much in the artist's style, which I think you were probably thrilled with when you got this one back.
Yeah. So yeah, this was Marco Ferrari. So I got this through Cam at Inky Knuckles. So he opened up his commission list and for Marco, and I really liked his style, and so I knew that I wanted to get something done from him, so I gave him the same list. He had the choice of Ramona, Daenerys, or Savage Land Rogue, and so I wasn't exactly sure what he was going to end up with, and then I think this one ended up taking a little bit of time, which was fine. I mean, it was obviously worth the time. And so this one was done on a Shikeshi board. And so I actually saw this the first time on Marco's Instagram. He like posted it out there, and he had like the process pieces with it as well. And so as soon as I saw it, I like emailed Cam and I was like, "Is that Savage Land Rogue is mine, right?" And he was like, "Yes, that is yours." And I was like, "Okay, great," because I was hoping that it was, because obviously it's a gorgeous piece. And the other part of the reason why I emailed Cam was because I saw all the process pieces that came with it, and so I wanted to get all of the process pieces that came with it as well, because those also were really well done. They're almost like one of them is almost a complete piece in and of itself, just without the depth. And so I said, hey, if there any way I can get all the process pieces that go with it, and so I ended up with those pieces as well.
Yeah, the zipatone and whatnot on there is just fantastic. But yeah, you got those. So you like the whole process as well. You like to see all the pieces that the artist, the steps that they take to get to the final piece.
Yeah, I mean, if they're doing a piece like that and there's like prelims or sketches, and I generally will try to get those as well to kind of keep it all together.
All right. Well, this is just a very unique approach too. You put the character's face in shadow. I mean, it's not like what you would think would work well, but it works, right? Because it's so daring, and the way that he did it is just it just makes for a more interesting piece. I mean, he could have left that shadow, not used that, and the piece would have been very different. But I really enjoy this piece a lot. So congratulations on getting that one. I'm sure when you saw the post on Instagram, I can understand why you'd reach out to Cam right away to find out if it was yours. I would have been happy to get this one too.
Yeah, no, because you never know, especially when you give them choices. Like maybe it wasn't going to be mine, maybe somebody else fit in for it. So I was like, tell me that's mine, please.
No, well, that's awesome. It really is, man. That is good. And what's the size on that one?
So that one, I want to say, I think it's like 9x9.
Okay.
It's nice. Yeah. I'm not sure exactly what the Shikeshi boards are, but the process pieces, interestingly enough, are 11x17.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, that's see, I've never gotten a Shikeshi. What do you think?
Yeah.
Never
Shikishi
heard of that.
or Shikishi, yeah. They're used a lot in Asia. They like a lot of the like anime artists will do like little we'll do art pieces and stuff for like the anime shows or whatnot that they'll like give out as like promotionals and stuff.
Huh. All right. I'm gonna look it up because I've never heard that term before. So well, Alan, we've had a good show tonight. Almost 2.5 hours. I didn't, you never know how long a show. See, it didn't feel like 2.5 hours, did it?
Yeah, no. I'm
always amazed when we, after talking, it's like it's just hanging out. You could talk forever about comic art. This is what we love to do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the thing is that even outside of like the art piece, it's always good to get to know people in the community and like talk about some of the background reasons for why we got into this or what interests us. Because I think at the end of the day, we all have different tastes. And I certainly have a certain aesthetic, but I would say the other thing too, as far as like art goes, that over time that I've found as well is that like art collecting or buying art or looking for art has been there's like also a kind of I don't know, almost like a therapeutic thing about it, right? Like if there's like things that are going on in your life, you can always be like, hey, I'm always like, oh, I can just still buy a nice piece of art and just like, and I feel better about whatever's going on.
Right. I never thought about that. I don't think we've ever talked about that, but it's true. You're absolutely right. When you find a piece of art you want to buy, I mean, that definitely changes your day. You get excited about it. I mean, there's a lot of people who might say the opposite when they don't get to buy things. Is it depresses them, right? They get disappointed that they don't get it, like a Felix art drop, for instance. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I can't think of a single time when I bought a piece of art where I wasn't, thrilled, beyond belief to get to buy it. You're absolutely right. And so you're right that there's a sense of joy that we all get. I mean, I don't know. It's just so funny that you say that, Alan, because we've never talked about it. And, we talk about it, we buy it because we love it, we like it, but thinking of it as therapeutic is really an interesting viewpoint, because it really is. I mean, I love my art collection. I broke open the 2 portfolios that I brought down here that I haven't looked at in 5 weeks, and it was so wonderful to look at the pieces of art in my collection and just remind myself how lucky I am to own these things. I mean,
Mhm.
collecting art is it's such a fun, rewarding experience, but therapeutic is not one that I've thought about. But you're absolutely right.
Yeah,
Wow.
no, it is. Because I mean, if you think about it, like when you have all like the COVID time period, I mean, that wasn't like the most exciting time, but it was certainly made a lot easier by for at least for me to be able to like talk to other collectors. Like I said, I got a lot of these pieces during that time, so I got
Mhm.
to meet and talk to other collectors through CAF or different artists I would like correspond with through email or messenger or whatnot. And so yeah, I mean, it kind of helps kind of get you through some things sometimes as well. And
Right.
like to me in a lot of ways it's similar to like music, right? Like art there can be like things attached to that art, like memories or like people or things that you can associate with that. And so there's things that come with that as well that I feel like, I mean, it's not just the fact that the art itself is beautiful, because I mean that's certainly a part of it, but I also think that there's like a different layer to it as well that you kind of get out of it that is therapeutic. So
Yeah. No, you are absolutely right. Wow. I mean, no, thank you for that insight. It's funny, the things we learn about the hobby. I mean, that's something that it's just kind of there, and you don't really realize it, how much joy that owning original art really brings. I mean, I'm not trying. It feels like I'm an infomercial, right? Trying to talk about collecting art is going to make you a happier person, but it does in its own weird way. Wow. I've just never thought of it like that. Thank you, Alan. So listen, this has been a lot of fun. Absolutely. What's your next? Oh, you're going to New York,
yeah, go
right?
to New York. Yeah.
And
So
any other shows throughout the end of the year that people might be able to see you at?
I am probably also going to go to GalaxyCon in Columbus
Okay.
because I have a friend who lives in that area, and I know the Cadence guys will be set up there with a fairly large contingent, and there's some artists there that I would like to try to get some stuff from, artists that I haven't actually personally met. I own some art from.
Hmm.
I know. I believe like Danny is going to be or supposed to be there, and I've
Oh,
like
cool.
done pieces from her, but I've never actually met her. So it's like one of those things where it'd be like cool to go and like actually have a conversation with her and maybe pick something else up from her at the show. Um, and I know like Zoe Thorogood is supposed to be there as well. So she's somebody who I might like to try to pick up something from as well. On the commission side, I
Sure.
do own a piece from her now on a published side. Um, but I know she also doesn't like to draw at shows, so it'd be something that I'd have to try to figure out if I can, get something arranged prior to the show. So,
Hmm.
but yeah, that's probably the only other one before the year's out, and then like I said, I'm already kind of like looking at next year and thinking about how that's going to look. And so, the three staples will be there: Heroes, Dragon Con, San Diego.
Right.
And then my plan is to try to work Lake Como in there somewhere, because that's the show that I'd like to try to
That's the big
add
one.
in.
Definitely is now. I mean, it's yeah. If I can get to that one too, that would be the one to do it. So, but Morgan puts on the best shows. He always has. Whether it was Big Wow, and even when he sets up at San Diego, he's just been a really kind of gracious booth host. He always brings in a lot of talent or helps people get booths there that might not normally. So, yeah, Steve's he's not an unsung. He songs will be sung about Steve Morger for many years to come for the things that he's done to make this hobby more enjoyable for everybody. So yeah, he's I'm happy to call him a friend of mine, because he's done a remarkable job just keeping the hobby fun and really focusing in. And it's funny, I feel like as much as he loves the collectors, his focus is on loving the artists and doing more for them and creating this great environment for them that makes them want to go to shows like Lake Como or like Big Wow when we owned it, and that just makes a much more enjoyable show for those of us who are going there to buy art. So he's just a very remarkable guy, and I admire him a great deal for all the good things that he's done for our hobby. But we'll end it on that note tonight, Alan. So anybody going to New York Comic Con, look out for Alan. He will be there, and Galaxy Con in Columbus, which I've never been to. I mean, now that I'm not in Ohio, it sounds like a fun show to go to. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, yeah. Yeah, I went to the Galaxy Con that was in Raleigh, just so then that's part of the reason why I'm interested in going to this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Cadence was set up there as well, and so there was some. That's so like Fabio Moon was there, so that I had a chance to get something from him. It's not somebody you get for every day.
right.
It's not a show, so I had to take advantage of that. And then I will say at that show that I have set aside a nice little stack of art that I got to peruse through. So there's some stuff that will be coming out that I'll have later in the year probably to add to the CAF from artists who I don't have any pieces from, but I ended up buying several pieces from because there just were several really good pieces from different titles that I really liked, and so it was a good opportunity to kind of get everything. So the artist that I don't already have, and then I have like another Jenny Frison that's coming, and then like I said, in New York, I have this Azure cover that will be the first one that I've had, first piece of art I have from him, and it's a very good. It again to like fill the box, right? This is like a really great piece that kind of fills the box for him.
Wow. Well, it sounds like yeah, you're going to be very busy leading up to the end of the year. So you might have a few more pieces to put into the best of for 2022 when it all is said and done.
Yeah, quite possibly. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for hanging out with us this evening. It was a great interview, and I'm glad that everybody enjoyed it as well. Well, Rick Welch said it was a great interview and an amazing collection. So I would completely agree. And if you like the show, hit the thumbs up. Nick Brucci wasn't here tonight to tell everybody about that, but give us a thumbs up if you're not subscribed to the channel. Do all that kind of stuff. I'm not good at that. PR and marketing is not my angle. I'm gonna have to hire somebody to do a good job of that for me. But Alan, I sincerely appreciate the fact that you had time tonight to do this, and I'm glad that your wife has put together this wonderful space for you as well to kind of do an interview like this. And you've given me the idea. I feel like I have to have one shelf behind me so I can interchange some of the art in a more reasonable way without putting more nails in the wall. Because at my old the office I probably when we pulled all the art off the walls, I had to paint the room. I had probably 100 nail holes on that one back wall because I just kept I'm dissatisfied with the layout, and it was a mess. I mean, there was a lot of putting and patching being done. So I had to paint it. I couldn't fake it. So I like what you've done there. That's really cool.
Yeah, well, I guess I'll be looking forward to that gallery wall at a future show of yours.
Exactly. All right. Well, we're gonna sign off. But again, thank you everybody. Thank you, Alan, and have a great night, everybody.